Good morning, everyone. My name is Molly, and thank you so much for joining us. We'll be getting started shortly, but as we wait for people to join, we'd love to learn more about you all. So feel free to go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat and tell us where you're tuning in from. So we'll go ahead and see if there's any answers coming in from the chat. Go ahead and type it in there. We'd love to see where everyone's coming from. Oh, wow, there's an old employee from Munich, Germany.
Allie, it's so good to see you virtually. It's so fun. We're going international this morning.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Perfect. Wow. Northern California. Perfect. All over. That's so wonderful. Such a far reach this morning. Perfect. San Diego, Washington, Encinitas.
Oh, I love seeing that we have people joining in with all ages, all levels of the family, mom and daughter.
Perfect. Awesome job. Okay, so once again, good morning, everyone. My name is Molly Reeves, and I'm an education coordinator with I Love a Clean San Diego. And I want to welcome everyone to our 6th annual Zero Waste Fair. I'm here with my co-host, Emily Nelson. Hi, Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily Nelson. I'm the education manager at I Love a Clean San Diego. And I just wanted to say thank you for spending your time with us this morning. I know there's a lot of other things you could do with a Saturday morning. So thanks for being here. And I'm really excited for today's lineup.
Great. We're also joined by a third I Love a Clean San Diego staff member, though you will not see her on camera. Her name is Valerie Lowe. She is an education coordinator and will be behind the scenes answering questions and adding resources to the chat. So you might see her name pop up a bit during today's event. I also want to take a moment to say thank you to the City of Encinitas for partnering with us and funding the Zero Waste Fair for 6 years now. And thank you to everyone who added a donation to their registration for this event. Your generosity helps us thrive and continue working to protect our environment. We will see Emily later throughout the program as she will be moderating the later sessions today. So thank you, Emily. Before we begin, I want to go over a few things. You'll notice that you are muted, and we do ask that you please stay muted throughout the event. We'll be using both the chat and the Q&A functions today. In the chat, we will be sharing links and resources, and you are more than welcome to do the same. Quick note on the chat function, please make sure to take a moment to double check and switch your response so that your comment is sent to all panelists and attendees. When you open the chat, there will be a little blue button that you can click and a drop-down menu will open. You want to make sure to click all panelists and attendees. We do ask that you reserve the chat for resources and ideas and use the Q&A to ask questions. This helps us stay a bit more organized and ensure that we don't miss any of your questions. Our event today is 4 hours long, so if you are planning on leaving and joining throughout the day, you can use the same link for the whole event. So this will be the same link that you used to join the event this morning. We will be recording the event today and we'll be posting it on our YouTube channel this upcoming week. It will also be included in the follow-up email that we will be sending to everyone who registered. In this email, you will also find the links and resources that we shared for all of our speakers. We will also be having an opportunity drawing today. There will be keywords every hour beginning at 10 a.m. Valerie will be sharing a link to a Google form in the chat, and again, every hour when that keyword is announced. To enter into the opportunity drawing, use this Google form to enter all of the keywords that you hear throughout the event. Each word entered correctly equals 1 entry. You can wait until the end and submit all of your words together, so that's perfectly fine. We will select the winners on Friday, June 18th. The prizes include 2 Not a Shop gift cards, Eco Nuts laundry detergent from Earth Hero, a starter jar kit and annual membership from Bristlecone Market, and a custom upcycled art piece from Be Creative Zone. So if you are familiar with I Love a Clean San Diego and have joined us before, thank you so much for joining us again. But if not, I have a little bit of background. I Love a Clean San Diego is an environmental nonprofit, and we have been around for over 65 years. And our vision is a zero waste, litter-free, and environmentally engaged San Diego region. In our organization, we have the ability to work with thousands of people all over San Diego County to help better our environment and reach our vision. In a typical year, we mobilize just over 35,000 volunteers to collect around 350,000 pounds of debris that would otherwise have stayed in our environment. We also educate over 45,000 youth and adults on various environmental topics. And as you can see on the picture on the screen, we have a storm drain stenciling program and stencil storm drain awareness messages on over 800 storm drains throughout this program every single year. We also run a zero waste database and hotline called Waste Free SD. And each year we handle greater than 29,000 recycling inquiries, letting people know how to dispose of, recycle, repurpose, or repair items properly. Through each of our programs, we highlight living a zero waste lifestyle as a solution to helping to protect our environment. And that is a big part of why we are here today for the Zero Waste Fair. First off, we all need to know what zero waste is. So zero waste is essentially a mindset and a lifestyle that mimics natural cycles as much as possible. If you think of how nature works, it works in cycles: the water cycle, life cycle, and carbon cycle. Nature really doesn't waste anything, and everything gets used. Humans in modern society have shifted away from that circular system and have adopted a linear system. Another way to describe that is to take, make, and dispose. So we take resources like water, minerals, or oil, make products, whether that be our phones, laptops, or computers, or really any product that you might have around you. And sometimes we use these products for years, which is great, but sometimes we use them only once, like a single-use plastic, and then we dispose of it. And those resources are really then lost in that linear system. So zero waste considers the entire life cycle of products, processes, and systems by maximizing our use of resources and seeing how we can get the most out of the resources that we took from the earth. It is a conscious way of living and decision-making that affects multiple areas of our lives. The idea of going zero waste can sometimes feel a bit overwhelming or near impossible, but taking it step by step makes it an achievable reality. Start by looking at the zero waste hierarchy, which we can see on the screen, where we can look at waste reduction techniques in order from the most preferred option down to the least preferred option. So our first, refuse and reduce, refusing what you don't need, reducing what you use, and therefore what you ultimately throw away. We can do this by looking for items in less packaging or recyclable packaging and using reusable items. Next, we have donate. So donating what you no longer use and repurposing what you already have at home. Maybe saving yogurt containers and lunch meat containers and using them as Tupperware. We have repair. So see if you can repair an item before you discard it. Recycle. Recycling our resources by composting or recycling in your blue bin at home. And disposal, or sending our items to the landfill, is the least desirable option. Our speakers today will be touching on each of these different steps, but I wanted to make sure you all had a background going into our event today. But why is this so important? Why go zero waste? There are many reasons, but one of them is environmental. Our landfills are unfortunately filling up, And two of our landfills here in San Diego County, the Miramar and Otay landfills, are anticipated to reach capacity or close in just under 10 years, around 2030. Currently, here in San Diego County, residents produce an average of 5.6 pounds of waste per person per day, which equates to 2,044 pounds of waste per person every single year. If waste is not properly disposed of in a trash or recycling bin, it can become litter. And litter travels through those storm drains, into our rivers, and ultimately out into the ocean with no filtration to catch that pollution. This happens both from purposeful littering as well as accidental. People may put trash into an overflowing trash can. It may then blow away, or an animal might dig it out of that trash can looking for food. Once out in our environment, litter then poses a threat to marine habitats. Another reason for zero waste is the human health impact. You may notice, especially the more you pay attention, that a lot of our packaging for food, beauty products, and toys is plastic. And if you have ever, for example, microwaved pasta with red sauce in Tupperware, after you take it out, the Tupperware stains red, and it's nearly impossible, as many times as you wash it, to get the red out. And that's because plastic is porous, so it absorbs the contents of what it touches. And it also does the opposite. It leaches its chemical content into the product it touches. So over time, your lotion or plastic toy will start to leach those chemicals. If you look at the ingredients list on a lot of our bottles, you will see polyethylene. This is the most common type of plastic that we use in our daily lives, mostly for packaging. It's typically number 1 or 2. And this has shown to leach into products with exposure to UV. So if you leave a bottle out in the sun, and exposure to heat. So if polyethylene gets heated, and just over time, it will start to leach. This has also been linked to a variety of health issues, from various types of cancers, endocrine disruption issues, and development issues. There are lots of health issues associated with polyethylene, not only for the workers who are exposed every day, but for those of us using these products at home. Along with helping to protect our environment against harmful pollutants and the human health impacts just discussed, a zero waste mindset has the opportunity for savings. So here is a good side to living more sustainably. We live in a society of convenience, but zero waste living calls for reusing what you have, only buying what you need, and shopping secondhand. This naturally lends itself to money-saving habits, such as cooking at home and avoiding window shopping. You are only really using what you need and not purchasing in excess, using everything to its maximum potential. So those are our 3 big reasons: environmental, health, and money savings. Hopefully, by the end of today's program, you will find your reason to begin a zero waste lifestyle and leave with tools to help you get started. We would love to hear from you. So if you have anything you are excited to start or have already tried or plan to try, please share. You can tag us on Instagram or use the hashtags throughout today's event that you see on the screen. So Zero Waste Fair, I Live a Clean SD, and Zero Waste Fair 21. We also have a quick introductory poll just to hear a bit more from you all. Val will launch that now, so you should see that popping up on your screen. So while you are filling out that poll, I want to go through our schedule for today. We are very lucky as our event today has a full lineup of speakers who are here to help us learn more about all things zero waste. So our next segment is the City of Encinitas, talking a little bit more about environmental initiatives. At 9:30, we have the San Diego Urban Sustainability Coalition, talking more about environmental justice here in San Diego. At 10 a.m., we have EDCO, giving us more information about organics recycling through anaerobic digestion. At 10:30, we have the Solana Center, telling us more about feeding the soil by composting. At 11 a.m., we have the San Diego Food System Alliance, giving us more information about solutions to reducing food waste. At 11:30, we have a segment from one of our staff members about waste-free SD, learning more about recycling, e-waste, and hazardous waste guidelines. At 12, we have a Q&A session with Acteevism about sustainable fashion. And then our last segment for today will be another Q&A section with the Zero Waste family, giving us more information on low waste living. So thank you to those who have filled out our poll. With that, I think we're ready to introduce our first guest speaker. Okay. So I Love a Clean San Diego is a proud partner with the City of Encinitas for the 6th annual Zero Waste Fair. As part of their climate action plan, the City of Encinitas has implemented a zero waste program that promotes waste prevention, recycling, and organic waste diversion. The City of Encinitas aims to divert 80% of solid waste from the landfill by 2030. This would reduce greenhouse gas emissions by almost 12,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. Ashley Sartakis is a management analyst with the City of Encinitas and will be sharing some recent accomplishments and initiatives. So hi, Ashley.
There we go. Good morning. Thank you, Molly. Let me see. I'm trying to share my screen. Let me make sure I get presentation mode. And see. Okay. So let me get started again. Hi, I'm Ashley Stratakis. I'm a management analyst for the Public Works Department here at the city, and I oversee the recycling and zero waste programs. First, I want to thank you all for being here, whether or not you live in Encinitas. I'm so happy you could join us. And also I wanted to thank I Love the Clean San Diego for putting this on. It's always an incredible event and I always learn so much, and I think you will too. And then finally, I want to thank all the other panelists who are taking the time to be here today to share their knowledge. Before we get to all the good stuff, I wanted to take a few moments to talk about what the city's been doing. Sometimes it feels like we're asking residents and businesses to do a lot of legwork, and we are, but as a city, we're also doing a lot, working just as hard to reduce our environmental impact and support the community in doing so. So I'll go over some recent activities related to our climate action plan and then our zero waste program that we've been implementing. So we recently updated our climate action plan. Typically it's updated every 5 years, but because of some state laws, we updated it back in November after a 2-year update. And so for our cities, our target for the CAP is to reduce emissions by 44% below 2012 levels by 2030. And the primary measures, which I took a screenshot here of our climate dashboard. So there will be a link, I think, shared later on to where you can view that. But these measures include building efficiency, renewable energy, water efficiency, clean and efficient transportation, and zero waste. And as I mentioned, we had an update. It was approved this past November, and more information in those updates can be found on the city's website. And then our climate action plan, or CAP administrator, Crystal Nahara, gave a great presentation on November 18th. So you can always check that out online too for more details. But some of the updates include new measures such as supporting state decarbonization legislation, infrastructure enhancements for biking and walking, and then paperless online permitting. So just a few, some are small, some are big, but we're all making a lot of progress. So it's very exciting. And then as for ongoing initiatives, since the city joined San Diego Community Power, SDCP, in 2019, the new electricity purchasing agency has established and begun serving power to customers in our city, as well as our partner cities, which are San Diego, Chula Vista, La Mesa, and Imperial Beach. And then service for the municipal customers, including schools, started in January of this year, and then commercial service began earlier this month, and residential services will begin early in 2022. So this past February, City Council adopted a resolution establishing the base electricity rate for Encinitas as their Power 100 rate. And this means that customers will be served with 100% renewable electricity from solar and wind sources. So super excited about that. And then if customers desire, they can switch to a power on rate. So it's different from the Power 100 in that they'll receive 50% renewable electricity at a lower rate. And they also have the option to switch back to SD if they'd like to. So after fully launching the program, SDCP plans to roll out customer programs like energy efficiency incentives, electric vehicle rebates, and electric appliance discounts. So a lot more to look forward to as well there. And then most importantly, this service that we'll receive from SDCP will help the city to vastly reduce its greenhouse gas emissions, so accounting for nearly half of the city's target reduction goal by 2030, which just goes to show how important this program is to our CAP and the progress we're making. And then we're also in the process of updating our green code. Let's see, our green building code. The proposed ordinance would establish additional energy efficiency, solar photovoltaic, and electrification requirements for certain new and remodeled residential, commercial, multi-unit residential, and hotel motel buildings. So a lot of the buildings we have here. This comprehensive building code update will put into place 5 of the city's 20 CAP measures and also put the city on a path to achieving its 2030 GHG reductions target, so the emissions target. And then the ordinance is expected to go to council for final approval in August. And then finally, we are gearing up for an electric bike share program through B-Cycle. And this was approved by City Council just in May. And a little bit about B-Cycle, they're a sister company of Electra Bikes, which is headquartered right here in Encinitas. So we're really excited to be supporting someone local. And it's already hit the ground running. The companies identified bike share dock site locations and is developing the program. So these electric power assist bikes will be available this fall. And as of right now, we're expecting there to be 100 e-bikes and about 10 docking stations with about 170 docks in total at the program's launch. So very excited about that. And then, oops, let me see. Okay, so here's kind of where my role comes into all of this, zero waste initiatives. One of the CAP measures calls for the diversion of solid waste through a zero waste program with the goal of diverting 80% of trash from the landfill by 2030. And so we're addressing this through a number of ways, with the biggest and most recent being an organics collection program. And that rolled out on June 1st for Encinitas residents. Our waste hauler, EDCO, who's here today, they started collecting they started collecting on June 1st from residents, meaning that residents can add food waste to their green waste. And let's see, they'll be speaking later today on the anaerobic digestion facility. So looking really forward to that. Then we're incredibly excited about the new program because it will help us meet our CAP landfill emission reduction goals. And the program is in response to SB 1383 state law, which requires the city to not only have this curbside organics collection program, but a host of other things, including establishing an edible food recovery, which is also really exciting to know that so much food will be diverted from the landfill. And not only if it's not recycled, it's going into the mouths of people who really need it. And so over the last year, we were really lucky to have partners who were able to adapt to the virtual world and continue to provide engaging education programs. So in addition to the organics rollout, we had Solana Center run a Waste Less from Land to Sea campaign. And that was a zero waste community outreach and education campaign that was launched in October for residents and businesses. And it focused on food generating businesses such as grocery stores and restaurants. And it also included social media outreach, webinars, workshops, resources and surveys, and individual consultations to businesses to help them reduce their waste. And so we'll definitely have more events on that, so stay tuned for that. And this is actually, this picture here is EDCO and Solana Center partnering at one of our farmers markets to provide outreach and education on the new organics program. And let's see. So another program we have that we're pretty excited about is the Earth Smart Actions. We partnered with BCK Programs to launch this program. It's an online portal where visitors can learn about and take simple environmental actions that can be accomplished at home. And this was huge, over the last year when people couldn't really get out, they could focus on how they could, reduce their waste at home. And so far there are 2 modules available on the website, stormwater quality and then zero waste. And then, of course, we have our Zero Waste Workshop series with ILACSD San Diego that culminates in the Zero Waste Fair. So we're always thrilled to have them join us and put on all these amazing programs for us. And then a few other smaller initiatives that we're trying to get off the ground is a reusable takeoutware program. It's been challenging with restaurants, but we do have one on board that we're hoping to make a case study out of. And that means that we are providing the restaurants with reusable takeout containers, and they will give them to their customers. And again, we're working out the exchange program, but it's pretty exciting and we're hoping to eventually expand it. And then finally, we have a green block leaders program that we're hoping to kick off soon. If you're interested in joining, I have an email that you can send a letter or send an email to see if you would be a good candidate. But it's really for any green-minded residents who are interested in sharing any knowledge they have on not only zero waste, but any environmental initiatives that are happening in the city. And we think it's a great way to reach out to people, especially because we're not having in-person events quite yet through the city, but hopefully that will change soon. But this allows people to share with their personal and professional network all the great things that are happening, and also provide some education, because especially with like recycling and now the organics program, people want to do the right thing, but they just don't know how. So it's always great if they can have someone they can go to, such as a neighbor or family member. And that is about all I have. So again, feel free if you have any questions. I'm not sure if we have time for any right now, but if we do, I'm happy to answer any. You can send me an email at recycling@encinitascity.gov, and I also have my phone number. So thank you very much. I hope you guys have a lot of fun today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ashley. And thank you again for partnering with us to put on such a wonderful event, the Zero Waste Fair. Your presentation was very informational, and it was wonderful to hear about what steps the City of Encinitas was taking towards going zero waste, especially learning about the Earth Smart Actions module. I think that's super cool. We do have time for a couple questions, so I'm going to go ahead and ask you those. If you do have questions, just a quick reminder to put your questions in the Q&A, as we are reserving the chat for resources, links, and ideas. So our first question is about your single-use plastic initiative. There are some studies that suggest bio-based plastics are similarly harmful to the environment as petroleum-based. Does Encinitas target all single-use plastics, plant or petroleum-based, in their plastics initiative?
I believe it's petroleum-based. I'm actually not the expert on that ordinance, but I know that we are allowing restaurants and businesses to offer the PLA or plastics that unfortunately aren't able to be composted in the new facility that EDCO has, and they'll probably touch on that too. So that's why I'm really pressing for this reusable takeoutware program, where allow people to bring containers from home. Even with everything kind of going back to normal, I'm hoping that people will be less concerned about using reusables.
Awesome. Yes, a big important step. There was one more question that came in from Susan. What is the biggest challenge with getting restaurants on board with takeoutware programs?
Well, I think some of them, they've been struggling just to stay in business, so their focus is elsewhere, and it's completely understandable. Because I had reached out to them back in the fall, and I had about a dozen restaurants who said, yes, like if you get something like this going, please let us know. We would love to be involved. And I think, after I reached out to them earlier this year, and only a few came back, and some were kind of like, oh, this is not a good time, but, keep us updated. And another thing that I forgot to mention is we partner with Surfrider, and we have some materials on our site. So even though businesses that might not be participating in the exchange program with us, they also can set up a little area in their restaurant where customers, if they're getting takeout, they'll bring their meal out on a reusable dish, and then the customer can bring their takeout container from home, their Tupperware, and then put it in there. So again, there's nothing being thrown out. So that's kind of something that we can have hopefully in the meantime until restaurants can get back on their feet and participate in something like this.
Awesome. Perfect. And then one last question. What is one habit you'd like to see our audience adopt, or one takeaway you have for our attendees?
So one habit, so again, I will press the reusable containers, or just reusables in general, just thinking about what kind of waste you're producing the most of, and see how you can take at least one item from your trash that you use on a daily basis and see how you can replace it with something reusable. And I think you'll get a lot of good ideas today. So even just one small step, it definitely will make a big difference if we're all taking action.
Wonderful. Thanks again, Ashley, for sharing the environmental initiatives and practices from the City of Encinitas. I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
For our next segment, we're going to focus on environmental justice. Environmental justice addresses meaningful involvement of all people in environmental initiatives and practices. The San Diego Urban Sustainability Coalition was created to address systematic inequality surrounding sustainability in San Diego. By bringing together communities of concern, stakeholders, and like-minded organizations, the San Diego Urban Sustainability Coalition creates collaboration and increases inclusivity, engagement, and personal responsibility. Dan Mueller, VP of Operations, and Sister Maria Muhammad, VP of Outreach and Programs, will be discussing the importance and impact of environmental justice in building mindful, resilient communities. Sister Maria and Dan, welcome to the Zero Waste Fair.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning, y'all.
We're happy to be here.
How is everyone? Great to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You're welcome to go ahead and get started.
Great. I will share my screen. Is everybody able to see what I've got up here?
It's beautiful.
Wonderful. Yeah, as said, I'm Dan Miller. I'm VP of Operations and Development for the San Diego Urban Sustainability Coalition. We are based predominantly in Southeast San Diego, but what we talk about is relevant to all of our communities as we all share the same earth and have the same goals for a healthy and vibrant planet. I'm really happy to be here today to contribute to this discussion on zero waste and specifically what zero waste looks like in communities of concern, while also tying back in what we're talking about today to some larger goals and some larger initiatives around environmental justice, which is really what we're focused on with the San Diego Urban Sustainability Coalition. So the San Diego Urban Sustainability Coalition, as previously mentioned, was created to address systemic inequity. And we know that part of that is educating our communities and keeping our communities engaged. So we'll talk a little bit later about our flagship program, which you may have heard of. It's Climate Ambassadors for Environmental Justice, where we teach folks about community organizing and the fundamentals of environmental literacy. And before we dive into that, we really want to set the stage for, how dynamic and complex these issues around climate change really are. But I think what today's programming is really getting at is we all can do something, right? We all are in charge of our own micro ecosystem and have the ability to affect change on the day-to-day. And I think that's really where the Sustainability Coalition tries to operate from, is a place of understanding that the system isn't equitable and needs shifting, and we need to think of new paradigms and new ways of doing things, but also that people are really at the core, at the heart and the center of this work. Really what we aim to do is create equitable collaborations for just solutions to climate change within communities of concern. Communities of concern are how we talk about communities that would otherwise be labeled as disadvantaged, low income, low access. They would light up on a number of census tract data, but we are concerned because we live and work within these communities. So we call them communities of concern, just to kind of get folks on the same page with our framing for today. It's not just Sister Maria and myself. We have two other folks on our core leadership team, Eddie Price, who is a fabulous pioneer of clean energy in San Diego, as well as our wonderful program manager, Jacob, who you probably have seen running some of our events that we've hosted over the last year. And we just became an official 501c3 last year. Until then, we were a fiscally sponsored project. And so we are very much grassroots, very much rooted in community. And really happy to be here today to help make some connections between all these different parts in the ecosystem and how we're all a part of a movement for social change. We're gonna go ahead and start this conversation with a little video that gives folks a brief history on environmental justice. And Sister Maria, can you give me a thumbs up if you're able to hear this?
Nationally, the facilities where we dump our garbage.
It's good now. Yep.
Oh.
Nationally, the facilities where we dump our garbage and process dangerous chemicals tend to be located in poor and minority communities. The people who live there have little or no protection from the industries around them, and things could get worse. So there's this idea of environmental justice. It's pretty simple. Communities shouldn't be forced to deal with more pollution because they belong to a certain race, national origin, or income bracket. Yet America has struggled over the years to implement any serious policy that actually protects these communities. So let's lay out the ways the government has failed them.
We will not allow Warren County to become a dump site.
The fight for environmental justice took off in 1982, when residents of Warren County, North Carolina mounted mass demonstrations against a plan to dump contaminated soil in a landfill in their community. The EPA investigated 4 similar landfills in southern states and found that they were all located in Black or low-income neighborhoods. In 1987, the United Church of Christ Racial Justice Commission found that around the country, hazardous waste facilities were more likely to be located in mostly minority communities. Amid mounting proof, the federal government was forced to act.
George Herbert Walker Bush.
So in 1992, President George H.W. Bush founded the Office of Environmental Justice inside the EPA. 2 years later, President Bill Clinton signed an executive order requiring federal agencies to consider environmental justice in all of their policies, as well as extending civil rights protection to environmental discrimination. But Congress never passed a bill to make Clinton's executive order law. Then came George W. Bush. His administration shifted the focus of the Office of Environmental Justice from protecting low-income and minority communities to all people, leaving vulnerable populations without a federal environmental advocate.
80% of New Orleans, including much of downtown, is underwater.
Under Bush, many environmental civil rights claims were rejected or delayed for years. In 2009, after President Barack Obama's election, his administration recommitted to environmental justice.
Generally speaking, in this country, a lot of environmentally problematic facilities tend to be located in places where poor folks live.
Yet, during the 2 years Democrats controlled the House, the Senate, and the White House, they didn't file a single bill focused on strengthening environmental justice protections. Passing major environmental legislation faded further when Republicans took control of Congress in the 2010 midterm elections. Now, President Donald J. Trump is making good on his vow to weaken the EPA.
Environmental protection, what they do is a disgrace. Every week they come out with new regulations. They make it
Who's going to protect
impossible.
the environment?
They will be fine with the environment. We can leave a little bit.
This budget, a 31% cut to the EPA, $2.6 billion cut away from the EPA. That's what the president wants.
As the EPA loses funding and regulations are rolled back, vulnerable communities may very likely fall through the cracks. I'm Talia Buford. I'll be covering these communities and digging into systemic environmental injustice. If you have something to tell me, email me at talia.buford@propublica.org.
And so that video is a short and sweet introduction to a very behemoth topic. And so just to provide a little bit of history of what efforts for environmental justice have looked like from an administrative standpoint in this country over the last several years. This next slide that we have here are some maps that are available to the public. You all can actually dive in and take a look at your own communities and see how they fare. But there are 2 mapping systems, 2 metric systems that we really use to take a look at these environmental issues and different environmental factors and how they're affecting different parts of our region, right? So the first is Cal Enviro Screen. And the second, a newer initiative, is the Climate Equity Index. And essentially, they highlight different factors like low birth weight, asthma, air quality, access to public transportation, all of these different things that go into affecting our climate. So it gives a very real and tangible lens through which to view these issues that we talk about when we talk about climate change and climate justice and environmental justice. It really does start at home. And I think part of that, and part of what we try to shed light on for our community members and for our program participants, is that in order to really understand how to be a part of the change, we have to understand what the issues are, really what we're up against, so we can be well equipped in finding solutions. And with that, let's go ahead and bring it in more locally and take a look at San Diego's history.
San Diego City Heights neighborhood is seeing a higher rate of coronavirus cases than the rest of the county. And it's the same story in Southeast San Diego. These communities that have higher rates of Black and Hispanic residents are where the nearly century-old and now illegal practice of redlining occurred. That's when a government-backed body marked maps of predominantly minority communities in red and labeled them a poor financial investment.
Black Americans being essentially by policy forced to stay in one part of a community, and white Americans being encouraged and supported in staying in another part of the community.
UC San Diego's Cheryl Anderson joined me outside the School of Public Health, where she's dean, to explain how this anti-Black policy led to the health disparities we're seeing today in Black and even Hispanic communities.
The start lines are different. And so you now have certain neighborhoods that by sheer structure and design don't get resources.
She says those disproportionate jumping off points became exacerbated over time.
And then you look up and you see outcomes, whether they be educational in nature or health in nature, and you say, oh, it must be that there's something wrong with Black people because Black people are having these poor outcomes. No, Black people were by policy forced into neighborhoods that were not developed, that were not invested in.
Give me a specific example of a lack of investment.
So you have a policy around housing that then settles people in a neighborhood where it is more likely to have tobacco and alcohol sold to you, where you are less likely to have green space and be physically active, where you are less likely to have access to grocery stores that allow you to nourish yourself in ways that are more adequate.
She says this goes back to zoning and planning decisions.
And then the chances of you developing high blood pressure, diabetes, lung disease are increased.
The center Anderson leads works with groups here in City Heights to provide better healthcare access. And it also established community gardens to provide healthier options for the area. But Anderson says that's just a small part of what needs to happen.
The real deal is when we take a justice approach, which is to really understand what is the barrier, what is the reason, what is the root cause for us seeing the outcomes that we're seeing, and removing those systemic barriers so that people can actually have, the ability to get to that better outcome.
I asked Anderson if there's anyone, anywhere, doing the work to counter these barriers. And she brought up the recent news that certain sports teams are rethinking their mascots that people have long pointed out are racist.
They're rethinking it because certain businesses are saying, we will not advertise, we will not support you if you continue to have this practice. And so I think what needs to happen is we need to think about this from a systems perspective. And we're all accountable. We all have a role here. And so when you see the power and the privilege beginning to listen and say, this is not okay, we have to figure out how it is that we're going to turn this around.
There might be some people out there, business owners or individuals, who have nothing to do with healthcare, who have nothing to do with providing resources for a community, who may think that they are exempt from having to take any action because they're not part of what created it, and they're not part of the system that can directly fix it. But it sounds like with your mascots example, you're saying that's not the case.
If you are supporting a community practice that has racist historical origins, racism is not a deal breaker for you. So you may not be racist, you may not be practicing or engaging in a racist moment, but is racism a deal breaker for you? And if racism is a deal breaker for you, then the way you vote, where you spend your money, and how you exercise, your time and energy will somehow be engaged in trying to help us address this issue of racism.
Anderson is penning an op-ed on the actions an individual can take. Taryn Mento, KPBS News.
Great, some more local context on this issue and the different ways that it manifests.
San Diego City Heights neighborhood is seeing.
I need to get to the next slide here. So I'm going to pass it off to Sister Maria now to talk about where we can see connections and how we can continue to think about this large issue in a real way.
Thank you, Dan. Good morning, everyone. So we look at the last couple of slides, we look at the last couple of videos, and we look at the systemic and structural issues as it pertains to environmental racism and environmental justice. And we want to take a look at these things, as Dan has previously stated, because we want to see where it started, how it has progressed, and what it is we can do now about it. So we look at race, we look at economics, we look at health, we look at place, structural and systemic, and we see the people who are hit first, worse than the longest. The number one determinant is race, and then it has to do with income. So when we talk about zero waste in communities of concern, it's generally through a different lens. It's generally within a different framework because as you can see through redlining and other systemic practices, communities of concern have become essentially wastelands, right? It's where you can have an auto shop right next to a home, right? Or you can have a school that's built on a landfill. And these are the things that communities of concern have to combat and have to be educated on as it pertains to waste and what that means and what zero waste means to us who live and work out in these communities and how it all overlaps. One thing leads to another, right? The hip bone's connected to the, I don't know, tailbone, I don't know, but it's all connected and it's all working in unison at the detriment of the community members who live and work there. And so we can see the connection, and then we have to work on making the connection. Next slide, please, Dan. So how SDUSC makes the connection and where we try to help our community members see where zero waste fits in is through education and through a lot of remembering. When you're looking at systemic issues and you're looking at structural issues, one of the things that you have to be mindful of is how to be resilient, right? We want to make sure that, you know, when we're discussing the zero waste and we're educating around zero waste, that we talk about the history and what it looks like in our communities and what our communities have been able to do with all of these things, working against the community and the members who live there. So you have to be resourceful, and we have to remember how we have survived and how we have become resourceful. And sometimes people do not make the connection. Next slide, please. And so this is what we do. If you look at your screen, right, this is how we make the connection with our community members. We look at the practices that we pass down from generation to generation that we may not think is a part of the zero waste movement, or we may not recognize as being a part of being responsible with your waste, but it's absolutely something that we have done for thousands of years. for Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And so if you look at here, if you look at the screen, you'll see the thrift shop. My auntie would call it consignment. You know, she was a little hoity-toity, so it wasn't exactly thrift with her, it was consignment. You'll see the Folgers, which is a coffee can. For those of us who may be a little younger and may not recognize that Folgers is a coffee can, but very seldomly that we keep coffee. Most of the time in our community and our households, it would be something else in that coffee can, right? And then you see the babies all in the bathtub together. I did that. I don't know how many people here who have done that, but I definitely took bath time was shared to conserve water, to conserve my mother's sanity. So everybody went in the tub at the same time. If you look at that cookie tin, we know that there hasn't been a cookie in that tin since the 1900s. We know that that tin, when you open it up, it's going to be some sewing kits, it's going to be some receipts that your grandmother, or lottery tickets, in my case, that my grandmother has been saving for some unknown reason, because obviously they did not hit. And one of the things I love to talk about is that TV. The TV there has some an antenna, which is something that the old folks used to use back in the day. And when I was doing this presentation one time and for elementary school students, one of the students said, hey, that's a life hack, Sister Maria. So, I mean, who knew communities of concern created life hacks, right? And so this is what we've had to do. And this is a part of our resiliency. When we did the tea, the sun tea, it wasn't necessarily because we just like the sun tea. A lot of it is we're living in these urban, within these urban heat index. We don't want to turn on the stove. So we make the tea and we sit it in the sun and let the sun do its job. These are just different things that we have conserved and recycled, upcycle, all of the fancy words that we hear that we don't necessarily recognize, because we have just done it because that's what you have to do. I don't know if anyone has put a baby, and I don't recommend this at all, but this is a common practice, to use the dresser as a crib and to put the baby in the drawer so that they can be safe, because you could not afford a crib. And so these are just some of the things that we point out to our community, and we have conversations with our community members so that they can see, you know what, we've been a part of this zero waste movement. Some of these practices we started as far as zero waste is concerned. So we do belong within this, I won't say trend, because it may be trending, but we do belong within this space. We do belong within the environmental justice and the environmental I can't think of the word, it's escaping me, but you all know what I mean. And you can put it in chat if you would like to help me out here. So yeah, so some of the things that we have done is just a demonstration of how we like to make the connection, how we like to talk to our community members and help them to remember what our grandmothers do, what our grandfathers did, and what their grandfathers did. We have been growing out of the backyards and bringing food into our tables since, time immemorial. So this isn't anything new, but we may not just recognize the vocabulary. So that's another thing that San Diego Urban Sustainability Coalition does, is we culturally translate, as we like to say it. We culturally translate some of the language and some of the vocabulary so that it is inclusive to all. Next slide, please. So what more can we do? What more can we do? So education, of course, become a climate ambassador for environmental justice. I believe a link is in the chat if you'd like to look it up so that you all can join our next cohort. Start a community project with your school, house of worship, your club, in your own backyard. Have a conversation. It starts with a simple conversation with our neighbors, with our families, with our friends, and of course, join a community organization like I Love a Clean San Diego. Dan?
So that really concludes the informative part of our presentation, and I think we're just at about time to turn it over to some Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you so much again for joining us, both Dan and Sister Maria. We really appreciate you taking the time to speak about such an important topic in our society and world. So thank you again. We really do appreciate it. So let's get into some questions. A quick reminder to our attendees to go ahead and put your questions in the Q&A as we are reserving the chat for resources, links, and ideas. Our first question, kind of going off of your work in environmental justice, what sparked you both to pursue social justice work?
How much time do we have? I'll start. So it really started with me with my grandmother, and she just was a community person. She believed in giving back. She was a mother of 13 children, a grandmother of 72 grandchildren, and Lord knows how many great-great-grandchildren. And she really passed on the legacy of community through my mom, through her children, and just through her church, and just in the community. And you have a lot of children, you got to keep an eye on what's going on, outside socially, to make sure that, everyone is acting like they have a little bit of sense. And so it really got her out into the community, and through her profession as a nurse, and to really care for her family and the community in which they lived and grew up.
I love it. I think I have sort of a similar story. I grew up in a small farming community. I was raised by my grandparents, who were also really involved in the community, just doing all that they could, stewards of the land, farming a small ½ acre. And they grew up, their parents in the Depression. So it was just always doing what you could with what you had, not letting anything go to waste, and making the most of every situation, and being there in solidarity with your community through thick and thin. And I think that was a really great model for me growing up. And as I grew up and explored more and traveled, I realized that, I could see myself as a vehicle for change, and I could make connections. And that's a lot of times what I think social justice work really is being able to make connections between people and resources, communities, organizations. And so I just felt really called, I think, and that was, started with having good role models growing up of what being a part of a community really looks like.
Amazing. Yeah. Those connections, whether it be with our families, our communities, lead us directly to a lot of the times where we end up kind of working towards. So that's amazing. Thank you. There was a question that just came in about our local San Diego community and governments. Have they been receptive to your work fighting for social and environmental justice?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a partnership, right? Collaboration is life. And we are all in this fight together. There is no sitting on the sidelines. So a part of our Climate Ambassador project and how it started was actually with the city of San Diego and the Climate Action Campaign and the Center for Sustainable Energy and community members that live in Southeastern San Diego. That I'm My Brother's Keeper, all of these, and Baby Baptist Church, all of these different organizations that came together, and governments that said, hey, this is something that needs attention. And so how do we work together? How do we figure out how to get the people who are impacted most the information that they need, and not just the information they need, but see what they know, because communities of concern have a wealth of information if anybody just bothers to ask. And so that is I think this is one of the greatest examples of collaboration and of cooperative and what I like to call operational unity, and taking it from the theory and implementing it, toward practical application. So yes, they love us. They don't have a choice.
And just to add on to that, it goes back to what Sister Maria was talking about earlier with the cultural translation, right? A lot of these high level, very jargony concepts, we are sort of the touch point for communities of concern to understand how it's affecting them, how they can get involved in the decision making, the planning, the implementing, and also how they already are, as we commented before, already are a part of the movement, right? We're really one with the environment. And I think a lot of our work is helping folks make that connection. And the local governments and, municipalities, things like that aren't really well suited to do that work, but we are. So it really is a great partnership for us to be there, to be that cultural center point.
Awesome. Thank you. Yes. And I love the point that you made, just to kind of wrap everything up, about how we can all do something, whether it be something small or big, and people are at that core. So I really, it kind of resonated with me. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So thank you again to you both, Sister Maria and Dan, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you for having us. Thank you so much, Molly.
Thank you. It's our pleasure.
Okay. So let me go ahead and pull up, because it's time for our keyword. So let me go ahead and pull up my screen really quickly, get that up for you all. Perfect. Okay, so we have our first keyword of the day. This hour's keyword is biodegradable. As a reminder, our keywords are important for our opportunity drawing. There will be keywords every hour starting now. To enter into the opportunity drawing, use the Google form in the chat box to enter all those keywords you hear throughout the event. Each word entered correctly equals 1 entry. You can wait until the end and submit all of your words together. We will select the winners on Friday, June 18th. A quick review of our prizes. We have a couple of gift cards and a membership to refill stores, eco-friendly laundry detergent, and a custom upcycled art piece. Once again, our first keyword of the day is biodegradable. Perfect. Okay, so let me go ahead and stop sharing. Perfect. So our next guest speaker definitely knows a thing or two about biodegradable items. I am super excited to introduce Jim Ambroso. Jim Ambroso serves as the general manager of EDCO, a family-owned and locally operated waste collection and recycling company, serving communities in Southern California since 1967. Jim's passion for creating innovative waste management techniques began when he implemented a newspaper recycling program back in college. EDCO leverages green technologies such as state-of-the-art materials recovery facility, also known as a MRF or MRF, where your recyclables are taken, to serve San Diego residents in daily waste management and sorting. Jim will be sharing the latest updates about EDCO's anaerobic digestion facility, which will allow residents to easily recycle organics, food waste, and food soiled paper through their green waste bin starting right now, starting this year. Our time with Jim will primarily be a Q&A session about EDCO's new anaerobic digestion facility. So a quick note, we will be discussing general recycling in a later segment with Emily at 11:30. So please save any questions about recycling until that time. At this time, please go ahead and type your questions about EDCO's anaerobic digestion facility in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. But good morning, Jim.
Good morning.
While the audience is submitting their questions in the Q&A, please go ahead and tell us a little bit more about EDCO's anaerobic digestion facility that will be coming online for the City of Encinitas this month.
All right, wonderful. First of all, it's an honor to be here with all of you. Thank you for this opportunity to share what EDCO's doing. It's really fun to talk about this topic because it's contemporary. It's all in front of all of us, and there's a lot of chatter and talk. Everybody's kind of starting to focus on it, and we're just proud to be able to be part of the solution. So I'm going to jump into some slides that I have prepared for y'all, and give you a little background on what EDCO's doing with our organics collection and processing program. So we'll get this laid out here. I'm going to jump right into it. Most everybody's familiar now with the regulations that California has passed in the last 6 years or so, really leading the nation in establishing the demand and the drive for removing organic waste materials that generate harmful methane pollutants from our landfilling. Landfilling's been there forever. We've realized that there's a tremendous source of pollution that comes out of there in the form of methane emissions. As you all know, methane is 25 times more potent greenhouse gas than CO2. And so it's a source that has to be controlled. And the state of California recognized this and began passing legislation several years back to get us to remove it. The most recent piece of legislation, which really has a lot of teeth in it, it's driving the programs right now, is SB 1383. And with it, we have specific goals and deadlines for removing organics from landfilling. So much so that by 2025, we hope to remove 75% of the organics from landfilling. And with it, we recognize in California that there's a lot of very good food that shouldn't go into landfill that's still edible. And so there's a goal by 2025 to remove 20% of that, or have 20% of edible food shared with those that have need. So it's a good piece of legislation. It's very extensive, and it's going to drive these results in California. So what is EDCO doing about this? Back several years ago, we saw this legislation coming. We wanted to get ahead of it, and so we went ahead and permitted and now have built and opened a new anaerobic digester in the city of Escondido. It's designed to serve all of our cities in San Diego County. What we do with this facility is we will convert organic waste into renewable products, such as renewable natural gas, to power our trucks. And we will also produce a valuable digestate or soil amendment that can be placed back on the soil and close that loop of bringing food in, use it, and put the nutrients and the carbon back into the soil. So here's how the digester works in very simple terms. We collect the food waste from residents and businesses. We process it through our digestive tanks. Inside those tanks, there are microbes that are designed, and this is, I may have mentioned, is an anaerobic digester, not aerobic. Many of you do a lot of backyard composting or participate in compost programs where we have aerobic bacteria, very different. Anaerobic bacteria operate in an oxygen-free environment. So inside those tanks, there's no oxygen, and those microbes break down the organic material and produce the methane gas. Methane gas is extracted off the top of the tank. We clean it, and then we prepare it to inject it into the pipeline where we put it in our trucks, our near zero trucks, then burn this renewable natural gas and operate on a carbon neutral or carbon negative fleet. So it's really beneficial to our air quality, air environment. With our facility, we are going to process 93,000 tons a year of organic material removed from the landfills. It's like taking 7,000 cars off the road. So we're really excited about this facility and the impact it can make in the community. So how are we deploying the program? And as Molly mentioned, we've been rolling this out to the residents. We started with the residents back in February, and now June 1st, we rolled out to the City of Encinitas. Most all of our cities in San Diego County now are able to participate in the program. Residentially, what we're doing is we're commingling food waste with green waste. We didn't want to add a fourth container to our collection routes. Residents already have, for the most part, 3 containers: a trash container, a recycling container, and a green waste container. So we designed the program such that you could mix all of the organics, food waste, and other material with your green waste, and we'll collect it on a normal route day. What can be included in there is your kitchen scraps, food scraps, all foods such as meat and bones, things that normally we wouldn't be able to compost in our backyard. We can now add them to this, to your green waste carts. Soiled paper is a big one. My wife and I had no idea how much soiled paper we get rid of when we're using napkins or paper towels or paper plates. Things that would take up a lot of space in the trash can now can go into our green waste container, and it's really helped to remove material and divert it in the right direction. Yard scraps mentioned already, grass, pruning waste, and wood and lumber. And there we have to be a little careful because we can't take any painted wood or any treated wood. So we have to be a little guarded on the lumber side of things. But if it's clean wood, put it in there, and we can go ahead and process that too. So to get folks to do this, we quickly realized to just tell them, go ahead and put your organic food scraps in your green waste cart wasn't going to do it. We needed to help them change habits in the kitchen. And that's really where the rubber meets the road, in my opinion. We have worked diligently on this topic to try to help folks keep it simple. First, we got to educate. So we've sent out a lot of literature to help folks understand why we're doing this and how to do it. EDCO has been providing this kitchen caddy, which is just a container that we can place in the kitchen. In Encinitas, we offered these bags as well, the paper bag that you see here, to go inside that caddy. And what it's designed to do is to help you quickly and easily separate the food right where you're preparing it, right where you're using it. There's a lot of ways to separate it. Some of you already have your own buckets or containers that you use for composting now. Whatever works for you is fine. My wife and I use the caddy. We sometimes use paper bags. Paper bags from the grocery store work great when you have a lot of visitors over. You can just fill up a bag and take it out. But when that little bag or the caddy is full, you simply take it out to your green waste cart and add it to your green waste scraps. We even found that a large, very large yard waste bag that I think I had it in the last picture above. That picture you see right there of that yard waste bag works really well in your green waste cart. We place that bag in our cart now, and we just bring our caddy out and we empty it right in there and we fold it up. End of the week, it just goes out with the scraps. So it helps keeps your green waste cart clean and odor free, keeps the bugs out, works really well. But whatever works for you is fine. Paper bags, wrapping scraps is the way to go. One thing that's taboo is plastics. Plastic bags, plastic film. A lot of folks are tempted to put a plastic bag in there, and that won't work. Plastic is something we have to remove at the digester for the digester to work efficiently. So what can we include? Well, I mentioned already most of the foods that you have, pretty much any food you generate in the kitchen, including meats, can go in there. I've mentioned the paper products is a big deal, paper cups, plates, coffee filters. We get a lot of questions about tea bags. Yes, they can go in there. All of those things, as well as any kind of landscape waste. If it grows, it can go. We also are expanding the program into the commercial side, and that will begin now in July through the rest of this year. So there's a large source of organic material in the grocery stores and in the restaurants, and we're working with them as well as multi-family locations, the condos, apartments, mobile home parks, food manufacturing. There's a tremendous amount of food that's being manufactured in our industrial parks throughout San Diego County. So we're touching base with them, helping them understand how we can help them separate that and bring it in. EDCO is installed, and we'll be starting July 1st, the use of a new machine that will help depackage commercial food. You can well imagine at a grocery store when they have food that's outdated or starts to lose its usefulness, they pull it off the shelf, and it's typically in a package. Well, they can't afford their labor to have folks open up all those packages. So we will take it in bulk and run it through our machine that will mechanically depackage everything for us. Works really well. I mentioned the outreach and public education side. EDCO's really done a lot of mailers. We're using social media, our websites, been doing a lot of workshops and seminars like this. And we're also going to be conducting, and I've already started, our one-on-one visits with customers to help them understand how to recycle the material and to right size their containers. For example, if they move the food into their organics container, they can now reduce their trash containers and reduce the cost of trash services. So we really want to drive that. That's really key, is to change behavior, help folks do it, and see the benefit of it in the cost side. Biodegradable plastics. I wanted to touch on this topic because we get a lot of questions about it. Folks say, well, can I put a biodegradable bag inside my caddy and collect my food there? And the answer today is no. I like to say it's not a no, maybe it's a not yet, because the products are improving almost weekly. But what you can put in there today is paper plates like this and cups. Dixie is a brand that the coating they put on their paper plates and cups is suitable to break down in the digester. But the things that we still can't do is the utensils. We have experimented and tested a number of them. We want to continue to keep testing them because they're making more and more of them of material that can break down. But a rigid utensil like a fork and a spoon that's made of different biodegradable materials still has a difficult time breaking down in the digester. Our residence time in a digester is only 2 weeks. So it's in there, it's in an optimal condition of temperature and microbes. It does break down to some degree, but not enough for us to complete that process. And the same with the compostable bags. They do break down eventually, but not fast enough for us. And it ends up showing up in our digestate product, which goes out in the farm fields. And it's something that's just not acceptable today. But I am encouraged to see the research that's being done. And I encourage all of you to keep an eye out. We'll communicate certainly the right time to do that. So where do we go from here? In 2021, we are now focused on the commercial generators. Our residents have all been introduced to the program and are asked to participate. So now we focus on those commercial generators through the second half of this year. We're also going to expand into multifamily. It's a little more challenging there because we have a lot of folks in one place and they don't have a lot of space for containers to collect it. So we work with each one individually, meet with them, figure out where best to put containers and supply caddies and get them started. Again, the goal is by January 1st of 2022, the end of this year, we hope to have everybody on the program. So we're aiming for that startup. That's when 1383, the regulation, officially becomes effective. And we have really a 2-year period to continue to educate, inform, and get people on the program so that by 2024, there is an opportunity for enforcement to be used by the cities or by the state of California. We hope all our customers are actively participating then. So I'm going to stop there. I think our time can be best used to answer your questions, and we'll go ahead and do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jim. This is such an important topic to zero in on because not only are we diverting food from our landfills, but like you mentioned, we see so many additional environmental benefits, like reduced methane emissions from our landfills and the digestate that is created from the anaerobic digester itself. Before I get into questions, I did want to point out that this anaerobic digestion facility is for EDCO customers. For those who don't have EDCO as their waste hauler, recycling organic waste is a statewide requirement, like Jim mentioned, SB 1383. So as a region, we have not historically been set up to collect organics from residents and businesses, but with Senate Bill 1383, we will begin seeing organic waste collection for both businesses and residents becoming more prevalent. Okay, so Jim, we have lots of questions coming in. The first one that I wanted to start with is that I have a lot of questions coming in about specific items and whether or not they can be put in the green bin and ultimately the anaerobic digester. So I've grouped them together and would appreciate your help going through all of them.
All right, yes, no, here we go.
Yeah, okay. So kind of branching off a little bit more what you talked about with compostable material, but what about compostable takeout containers? Will those be able to go in the anaerobic digester?
So I ask you to look at them carefully. If they look like they've been made of paper, which a lot of them are converting over to now, and you don't see a layer of plastic in there, then go ahead and do it. Some of them are using a spray right now, a biodegradable vegetable-based spray that works really well. Yes, you can use those just as long as you don't see a true plastic film that you can almost peel off. If you can peel that off, it's a no-no.
Okay, good to know. And then do you mind clarifying what types of paper counts as food soil paper? So for example, like with the ones that may have that layer of plastic, so ice cream cartons, fast food items like French fry sleeves or soda cups.
Yeah.
Kind of, what does that kind of go with?
So a lot of the soda cups are, if they're a really more rigid, sturdy paper cup or soda cup, they're probably wax coated. And those we can't take because they just don't break down. It's the thinner ones. And if you look at a Dixie cup, to use that brand, it's a very thin layer of spray, a sprayed on barrier that they use, and it works just fine. You know, some of the containers you use in fast food restaurants, they're getting better at it. Most of them have not gotten there yet. If you see any aluminum, it can't be used. If you see multiple materials on a package, like styrofoam, for example, that's still a no-no. Can't use that in there. The clamshells, the PET clamshells are clear plastic. We encourage you to recycle those in your blue bin, but it would not work in the organic side of things. Otherwise, paper wrapping on burgers or, as you say, French fries, a lot of that, if it looks like it's paper-based and doesn't have a plastic film, it's okay.
Perfect.
The other one I'll mention that's always asked, and I forgot to mention earlier, is pizza boxes.
Yes.
Cardboard, soil, that kind of stuff absolutely is good to go in your organics container. We couldn't
Okay.
recycle that before, now we can.
Okay, awesome. So kind of building off of that with the pizza boxes that have grease on them, if you have a pizza box or maybe the top of the pizza box that isn't covered in grease, what would you recommend? Would you recommend what would be better, putting it in the anaerobic digester or putting it in the recycling bin?
Recycling. If it's clean, put it in the blue bin. Recycling side of things, it's a better use to reuse it that way.
Okay, perfect. And then what about fabric scraps if they're 100% cotton, like if you quilt?
That's a good question. We haven't encountered too much of that yet. It is covered under 1383, so it is something we've got to remove from the landfills. I have to be honest, we have not experimented with fabric to see how well it breaks down, but it is organic. Conceptually, it should break down. Whether it would do so in a time frame we have, I'm not sure. But let us work on that, and we'll begin to tell folks or inform you all down the road how well that works.
Perfect. Cotton balls?
Right now, I would include them if they're cotton balls. Something small like that, that shouldn't be an issue. I would include it.
Okay. What about parchment paper?
Parchment paper is fine.
Yep. And then stone fruit pits.
They're fine. We've been working with those. Everything gets ground up, and most of the pits, like avocado pits and things like that, actually grind up, and we are able to digest them. So
awesome, cool. What about chewing gum?
Sure.
Our next one is a little bit kind of like that same lines. The used Kleenex or hair and nail clippings. They're not food soiled, but they are organic.
Yeah, I would venture to guess. First of all, the tissue, yes, definitely digestible. Nail clippings, I think could probably keep it out. I don't think it'll work, but you can put it in, and if it doesn't work, we'll certainly let folks know down the road. But it's not that we're trying to take everything we can. We're trying to be reasonable about this and understanding the technology and what it really does in that time frame.
Exactly. And then you had mentioned items that can't typically be included in our backyard composting, things like meat and bones. Does that include oil and bacon grease as well as dairy?
Yes, we can take any dairy product that you have, oil and grease, like bacon grease is definitely something that works really well in a digester. Our only caution is if you have a large amount of grease, say liquid grease, if you were doing deep frying, that you not include that or include a little bit over time. Because what will typically happen is it'll end up on the bottom of your green waste container and then leak out of our truck. So we do have facilities that can take that oil in bulk, but it's okay to put some grease in, mix it in with the paper products and your green waste, and it's fine.
Perfect. Okay, so the last of these questions is, can you use old cereal boxes to wrap up your food?
Yes, absolutely. Be creative. We do that sometimes. You've got a box there, why not put it in there and then put it in with your green waste. The paper bags from the grocery stores are great. Any kind of paper, craft product, or cardboard product is fine.
Perfect. Okay, so kind of going off of your answer, this brings up the point that we should kind of still be focusing on eating our food and preventing that spoilage. It's great that the digester is there and we do have the ability to make use of it, but as much as possible, we want to use it for items we can't consume or utilize in other ways. So I just wanted to bring that up. The other question that we have that I've gotten a lot is, will there be tours?
There will be tours, and we've told folks to just give us the next 6 months to get working the bugs out, so to speak. We will plan for tours starting probably next year, and we have the facility set up with a lookout room that looks out over the whole operation, and it'll be ideal for bringing everyone in to see it.
Awesome, perfect. I'll definitely sign up for that. A couple of other questions. I know you mentioned that you'll be working with different organizations to get those green bins. Is there anything that residents can do right now to get green bins into their condo or townhouse community?
Yeah, they can just contact us on our check our websites out for each of your locations. We do have phone numbers, texts, emails. Get a hold of us and we will deliver them.
Awesome, perfect. And then there's a couple questions about the digestate itself. Is there, does it have to be further processed before it can be used as a soil amendment? Or are there plans to have this liquid end product be available for residents?
So good question. We actually produce two forms of products besides the renewable natural gas that goes into our trucks. The digestate, it's a liquid form and a solid form. It comes out in more of a slurry, and we actually separate it into the liquid and solid. The liquid form is something that we can spray on the fields right now. It has nutrients value to it, and we actually spray it on compost piles as well, because Southern California is super dry, so that moisture it's a good place to put it. But the dry component, we can actually apply to farm fields now, straight out of the digester. But what we are doing is we're doing some of that, but we're also taking it and mixing it with compost and further processing it there. We're learning a lot about it. We're just started generating it in the last month. We're testing it for nutrient value and other components, but it'll be there. It's definitely can get back into the farm community very soon, just in its natural state as it comes out.
Awesome, perfect. And kind of along those same lines as what we're going to use and how it's going to help us kind of protect the environment. Stephanie asked, it sounds like the anaerobic digester will reduce fuel consumption and fuel cost for EDCO. They said, correct me if I'm wrong. But if EDCO sees operational cost savings, will those savings be passed on to the customer costs of waste hauling?
Yeah, I'd like to say yes to that, but the answer is not. That's not necessarily the case. Sure, we're really not saving money to convert our food into renewable natural gas, but what we are is displacing the carbon-based or the oil-based fuel that we would use. So the cost of this program and the cost of developing all that, the facility and that is very, very expensive. And to create our renewable natural gas costs us more than it would to go out and even buy it off the market. But we're committed to that. Of course, we have to produce renewable natural gas and reduce our carbon footprint. And hence we do that. But there's really isn't a cost savings involved, but we are displacing what we would have normally purchased that would have been produced from hydrocarbons.
Awesome, good. Okay. And then one more question from the audience. How will you remove things that people put in that you can't use?
Question. We are, fortunately or unfortunately, we remove them at our plant. So everything that comes in gets pre-screened with the employees that do pull out some of the contaminants. Plastic bags is a classic one. Some folks just can't resist the temptation to use plastic bags, so we do remove those. And then we also have a look at it before it goes into digester on a sort line. We're picking from there. And then after the fact, when it comes out in digestate, we can see material there that can be removed if necessary.
Okay, good to know. So just as kind of a recap for the City of Encinitas, just to kind of confirm, City of Encinitas residents, this program is good to go for them, correct?
That's correct. It started June 1st, so they're on, and we've delivered caddies to all the single family residents there. The multifamily is coming next, along with the commercial side.
Perfect. And then just kind of a little bit more information. What is the timeline for other cities in San Diego County, or who should already have this program and who is on the horizon?
Well, all of our North County cities are on the program now. The only ones that, and the other companies are providing in Carlsbad, for example, Oceanside is through Waste Management, and what they've rolled out, I'm not entirely familiar with, but our cities all have the program, as well as in South San Diego. I think we have 12 out of the 18 cities in San Diego County. One of them being the city of San Diego. We also are providing it commercially. So most of the cities in San Diego County, at least the EDCO cities, should be on the program now.
Awesome. And then last question, I know there are some other questions, or actually two more questions. One question, if there's a lot of questions that people have, is there a way that people can get in contact with EDCO if they have further questions?
Yes, you can go on our website. There's an information link there. You can text us, as I mentioned earlier, email, contact us directly or call us, and we'll be happy to answer these kinds of questions.
Perfect. Awesome. And then one last question. What is one habit that you'd like to see our audience adopt, or one takeaway that you have for our attendees?
Well, I've said this many times, and I think it's so true still, is that this is something we can do. Change is always challenging, but we have found that when you get in and get your feet wet, so to speak, get your hands wet, we can change our behavior in our kitchens and separate the food and do a good job at it. Just find what works for you. stay with it. There's a lot of reasons people say I can't do this. They're afraid of the bugs, the smell, all that stuff. Most of that is not true. Most of you'll find it's just not there. And my wife and I have embraced this years ago, over the last several years. And when I first started doing this, she said, "Oh, I'm not going to do it." After 2 weeks, she found it works well and she loves it. So if we can do it, you can do it too.
Awesome. Thank you again for joining us today, Jim. We really appreciate you taking the time to discuss your work to help move our region move forward. We're all looking forward to kind of using this anaerobic digester and seeing kind of how it moves forward through San Diego County. So thank you again, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, you too. Enjoyed it. Bye-bye.
Perfect. Okay. So similar to the anaerobic digester, composting at home not only allows for waste diversion, but has so many additional benefits as well. Here to tell us more is Diane Hazard, the Director of Education with Solana Center. Diane loves to connect people of all ages to the wonders of composting. Solana Center is an Encinitas-based environmental nonprofit organization that empowers the San Diego community with the knowledge and resources to take action through composting, zero waste practices, and water conservation. In the last 3 years, Solana Center composting programs have enabled the diversion of about 6 million pounds of organic waste from the landfill. These efforts were recognized in 2016 when Solana Center received the state's highest environmental honor, the Governor's Environmental and Economic Leadership Award. Diane will be teaching us some must-know tips and tricks about composting during her presentation today. So with that, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Diane. Hi, Diane.
Hello, Molly. Thank you. Thank you for the City of Encinitas for having us here and for ILACSD for putting this together. And thank you for my other presenters. I'm learning a lot. This is a great collaboration and really some interesting topics here. So thank you for that. We are Solana Center, and we are a nonprofit here in Encinitas. We've been around for about 40 years, and we do all sorts of things, but today we're gonna really talk to you about composting. We love talking about composting. We're gonna come talk dirt with Solana Center, if you will. And so short presentation. So just gonna give you a high level overview of two of the most common types of composting, not really getting into all the details of the how-to. But if you want to dig deeper with us, we've got lots of resources and have links that we'll share in the chat. So we'll give ways for you to go deeper with us if you'd like. So I think most of you get this, but just recapping, what is composting? Decomposition is Mother Nature's way of recycling her materials. And so she's been doing it for time immemorial. She's got it down. She knows what she's doing. However, we as humans make a lot of waste, a lot of organic waste. And by organic, I don't mean the organic section of the grocery store without pesticides and fertilizers. I mean organic as in that which was once living. So Mother Nature, Molly mentioned this earlier, she has a closed loop system, not a linear system. She understands how to take what's being used and give it back, but humans have kind of derailed that. And so, and composting, what we're doing is optimizing what Mother Nature does. And so what we say is we create a buffet of all this wonderful organic materials and such a delightful banquet that all these decomposers want to come into the process. And we say we bring in the FBI, we bring in the fungi, the bacteria, and the invertebrates to help feast and help us break down these organic materials. So the bacteria here, they're microscopic, so you can't see them. Well, actually, there's some that you can, but rarely can you see them. And they're the big players. They're so populous in your compost piles. They're very small, but they're mighty. Their additive effects are quite impactful. And often in your aerobic process, because when you're composting in your backyard, or a lot of the commercial facilities are aerobic, not like the anaerobic digester that we just talked about. So sometimes these bacteria are so rocking the pile that they actually, you can see the heat coming off the pile, which is very cool. And heat makes that process go more quickly. If you think about as you're making dinner and you're gonna cook some pasta. If you put your pasta in the water on the stove and don't turn the flame on, it's gonna be a long time for dinner. So these thermophilic bacteria make that process move very quickly. Mother Nature doesn't usually compost this way. So we're taking what she does and tweaking it to make it happen more quickly. And then we have fungi, the yeast, molds, and mushrooms. They come in a little later in the process, and they break down some of the more woody pieces, the more cellulose, hemicellulose. They've got specialized enzymes that help break those things down. And then later we have other players, the invertebrates, critters and beasties without spines. There's so many of them, and many show up in your pile. And then the hero of this process of the invertebrates are the worms. They are so cool that they get their own type of specialized composting, and we'll talk about that too. So I think we've mentioned this already. Why should we compost? Well, we make a lot of organic waste. And so according to the EPA, only about 10% of our food waste is currently being composted. And you can see here, food waste, yard waste, wood, paper, all of these things are compostable. And so you can keep them out of the landfill. That's our goal, keep it out of the landfill. The blue region here could be recycled. And then of course, there's some zone of things that are much more challenging. But in our goal towards zero waste, if we keep the organics out of the landfill and break them down with the composting system, and then we recycle the plastics, we're a long way on that road to zero waste. But in that scheme of the 3 R's, we say 4 R's, the reduce, reuse, recycle, and rot. The one I think is the most important is reduce. If you make less to begin with, we have less to deal with. So that's where I would start. So why should you compost at home? Well, why don't you send it all to the digester? I'd love that, well, I wouldn't love that. There's many different reasons, but I love that they're doing that. I love that they're taking it on. EDCO is taking on, giving us an option. That's so great. I have friends who will never compost at home. I love them dearly, but that's just never going to be what they're going to do. So I love that EDCO is giving us options, but they're not able to handle all the organic waste that we're creating. And then as Sister Maria and Dan said, all of us have a stake in doing our own part. And so I think that's what, we can start with our own individual actions. I think that makes a big difference. The other key thing at composting at home, I think if you're gonna be a home composter, you're probably a gardener. And they are peanut butter and jelly, particularly here in San Diego, because our soil is so poor that we really need to improve it. It was never intended to grow the edible fruits and vegetables and flowers, not edible flowers, but the decorative flowers that we want to have in our home landscape or our gardens. And they can't grow with San Diego soils, Southern California soils, too sandy, too clay. They need that organic matter that you would provide through composting. And composting with organic matter, you improve the soil structure. Under a microscope, a compost particle looks like a little tiny sponge. And in those little pore spaces, they hold air. They create an area for little water film in those pore spaces, and all the microbes live in those films of water. And then the microbes then become they breed and they become the food for other organisms, then larger organisms. So that starts the basis of creating this whole soil food web. Compost holds water. Again, San Diego is not only do we have poor soil, we got beautiful weather, but poor soil, but water is exceedingly precious here. And so compost helps hold water in our soil. And then the nutrients are released slowly. And that's really a nice way, this way plants naturally would want to uptake the nutrients. So you're conserving resources. We already mentioned the greenhouse gas reduction. You're playing your part in carbon sequestration, and you're actually saving money. You could go out and buy all this stuff from the store. I think that's crazy on so many levels, but it's expensive, I guess, just starting with that. But if you look at this picture, this was at Solana Center. We were building a compost pile there, and we know exactly what went into our compost because we made it. So you control the contents, and the more diversity, the more interesting things that you put into your process, your composting process, the more nutrient rich, more interesting, diverse, yummy compost you end up with at the end. So we're going to talk a little bit about traditional or worm composting. Again, very high level, so I'm just going to touch on this briefly, but people come to Solana Center and say, which one should I do? And the first thing we ask them is about their feedstock. And by feedstock, it means what are the things you have on your property that you could put into your composting process? So vermicomposting, easy peasy. I love vermicomposting. I do both, but I love worms and kids love worms. What's not to love? But they really, if you primarily have food scraps, that would be a good system for you. Traditional composting can't be just food scraps. You need more bulking agents, bigger materials, and so you would need some more yard waste, things like that. Encinitas, some of the properties here are quite huge. I would recommend then you have traditional composting if you have a lot of yard debris. But if you have just food scraps, consider vermicomposting, and you certainly can do both. The vermicomposting process is fairly passive. It doesn't require a lot of physical strength. So another reason we use it for a lot with kids, it's easy for kids to do. But again, if you're not really robust, the worms and the bacteria are doing most of the work here. Traditional compost requires you being a little more active. You got to chop and chip and move the materials around. So it does take a little more muscle. It's a little more active process. It's a nice way to get a workout and avoid going to the gym. So, and working in both these processes, as things break down, scientists have shown that they off-gas this biochemical that's called geosmin, and it's actually a serotonin stimulator. So working in the garden makes you happy, scientifically proven. So that's the reason why us gardeners are so darn happy out there. Worms take up a lot less space. You can do them in small spaces. You actually can do them inside. We have little tiny bins that we have in classrooms and offices. So it's, I think, easier outside, but you could do it inside. Traditional composting does have to be done outside. It just is the better way to work there. And I think I mentioned the different players, worms and bacteria, part of the vermicomposting world. In traditional composting, you've got all the players show up. You've got lots and lots of bacteria. You've got lots of the decomposers, the invertebrate decomposers coming in, the macro decomposers, and worms could show up on their own as well. So for traditional composting, the key components, browns, greens, air, and moisture. Oh, and I'm missing my sharing links. Would you share, please, the links for the backyard composting resources? And would you also please share the CIY guide? I forgot to mention those. Thank you. So greens are often green in color, but not always green. As you'll see, we've got coffee grounds and animal manures here, but they are often green in color. And they have a lot of moisture, have a lot of nitrogen. They kickstart the microbial process. So they really jump and get things going. The browns are old greens. So greens will off-gas nitrogen, lose their moisture, dehydrate and desiccate and become browns. You can be a green, can become a brown, but you can't go vice versa. Can't go back again. There are things in between, so I don't want you to overstress on this, whether it's a green or brown. Sometimes you say you've got breens or grounds, because everything is a process, a continuum, and ever changing. But the browns in your compost pile serve as the bulking agent, the structure, the bones of the process, and provide the long-term energy in the process. We have something we call the hot car test. If you're not sure if it's a green or a brown, take some materials, or even imagine taking the materials, putting them in a car on a hot summer day, close all the windows, wait for a couple of hours and come back and open the windows and see what happens. You can imagine if it were coffee grounds, grass, which can get really stanky, in my opinion, food scraps, manures, they're gonna have a pretty interesting smell. Whereas the browns, they've already off-gassed their VOCs, their organic aromatics, and so they shouldn't really have a smell. So additionally, you need air. I mentioned that in the beginning, and you'll need moisture. And moisture level, we suggested it be that of a wrung out sponge. We use the Goldilocks rule, not too wet, not too dry, just right. And that wrung out sponge is actually the moisture level you're looking for. You can reach in and grab a pile of, grab a handful of your compost, not your worms, because you'll squish them, but your regular compost, and squish it and see if you thread the moisture threads a little bit between your fingers of a gloved hand or drops a couple drips of water, that's what you're looking for. Air balance, you do need to aerate your pile intermittently, but we'll send you our compost resource guide in the links, and that will help you get some more ideas of how to do this. We have classes, we have all sorts of things to help you. This is just to get you started and interested in this. So in the worm world, again, one of my faves, worms there are thousands of worms. We used to say 4,000, then we read 6,000, now I've heard 7,000. They're continually discovering different species of worms. However, composting worms, there are only a handful of them. They're very specialized, so you can't just use any worms in your worm composting process. You need to use these specialized compost worms. They're either called red wigglers, the City of. And the reason they are so perfect for this setup is they eat half their weight in food scraps daily. They are voracious consumers, and they're just little guys, but it's amazing. They're little piglets. They reproduce like crazy, and they tolerate life in captivity. In fact, they like it here in San Diego. If you set them free into your yard, we don't have enough organic material or moisture in our environment, they would die. So they need for us to provide them food and a habitat. And I'm going to ask you to send the link for our vermicomposting resources now in the chat, if you would, that'd be lovely. So for wormies, the 4 basic components are bedding, food, water, and air. The nice thing is they eat their bedding too. Yeah, that's a source of food for them. But just like I mentioned in the traditional composting, you could just feed them their bedding and they would get by. But what your goal is to have the finished product, their poo, is called worm castings, vermicastings. It's a very nutrient-rich soil amendment. It's lovely. But you make it more interesting by adding more interesting foods. So the more interesting things you put in there, the more interesting things you get out. We suggest you keep out in backyard composting and vermicomposting. At this residential level, we suggest you keep out meat, bones, dairy, oils, and for wormies, citrus. Citrus can go into the traditional pile, but not into the worm bin. It has something called limonene in the skin of the citrus peel that can be toxic in high levels. It's an antibacteria. So the bedding most commonly used here is shredded paper, works really nicely with some sort of gritty agent to help it from sticking together. Plus worms use the grit in their crop and gizzard to help break down and digest their food. They don't have teeth. They don't eat through the food, even though you often see pictures of a worm like coming through an apple. They don't really bore through an apple that way. They are waiting for the bacteria to do the front work, and then they eat that nice slurpy slop that's left over after the food is mostly rotted, and they'll eat the bacteria and the sloppy food and kind of just slurp it up. What else do I want to say about this? Coconut coir is another bedding item. And coconut coir is the end product of the coconut process. It's the husk that's outside in the coconut shell. And they take all that and shred it all up and compress it in a brick, and then you can rehydrate that and make that into worm bedding. It is a lovely product, but you do have to buy it. And it is shipped here from like the Philippines, so has some carbon footprint. But anyway, I'm going to keep pressing forward. I think I'm getting close to the end of my time. So I mentioned food, water, they need air. Everything living here in this process needs air. So you definitely want to make sure you keep air. If you're designing your own bin, that you add air holes. And so here is a little worm cocoon up close. If you are providing the 4 ingredients I mentioned to your worms, they are happy. And when they're happy, they make babies. And so this cocoon will form around their clitellum, the little collar that mature worms have in the upper third of their body, and it will harden and slough off. And in it are several little worms. And so this is kind of the notochord, or the nerve center of the baby worms. They're going to hatch out of there. And so if your worms are happy, they make lots more. So you don't have to, you have to buy the worms to get started because they're not indigenous. However, they can go on forever. Someone gave me my worms as a birthday present before my son was born. My son is 28. So I still have those, and they're great grandchildren. So they're quite, I said, they're prodigious reproducers. Different types of worm bins. You can make your own. The directions for this are on our website. So if you wouldn't mind sharing links to how to build your own worm bins, thank you. And we also had one how to build your own compost bins. In-ground, lovely. We do a whole series just on this. Really nice if you live inland and you have more extreme temperatures. Worms do not do well in very cold or very hot environments. So this kind of gives them a little extra edge and insulation. The thing on the far right is a Wrigley Ranch. It is subsidized by many jurisdictions, including City of San Diego, unincorporated county residents in San Diego. Encinitas will be subsidizing them come July 1st. We've exhausted that subsidy this fiscal year. And there is a link, please, for our compost bin discount page. If you could share that, that would be lovely. And many different types of compost bins, so many types. The one here in the corner is one that is you can get at Solana Center, or is also subsidized, as I mentioned, with the Wrigley Ranch. If you have a lot of material, you might consider a multi-bin system. I have about a ½ acre here in Encinitas. I have 4 compost bins and 4 worm bins. So if you're generating that type of material, then you can be processing it in multiple bin systems. Many ways to make your own. There's a little mini homemade. This is probably, it's almost a toy. This is not highly effective, but you know what? Many roads to Rome, and I celebrate them all. It does work, just doesn't work really well. And there's a tumbler, pros and cons to tumblers. Again, we could do a whole workshop just on tumblers, but for some people, that's the system that they feel more comfortable with. And so that's there for you. Using your compost at home, just very quickly, you would integrate it into your soil. I'm just going to kind of leave it at that. But I want to add to there that our native plants don't appreciate compost. Not everyone loves compost, hard as that may seem to be, because indigenous plants evolved without all this organic material and without a lot of moisture that the compost will hold. They don't like their feet wet. So you would be adding into your raised bed gardens for your vegetables, around spreading around your fruit trees, watering it in. It's a lovely thing. You can dig it in a little bit, but that will get you going. And so here, if you've got questions, I know ILACSD says they have a hotline. We have a rot line because we can call us about things that rot. So we're there for you in that way. Here's our information to contact us. Again, if you are City of San Diego or unincorporated county, they're allowing us to do a one-on-one consultation with you for ½ an hour. You can take your iPad or your phone into the garden. We can go there and visit with you. And we've got lots of events that we offer to share with you too. And I think we'll share those links. So I can just jump to the very last page and say, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Sorry about some of those technical wrinkles, but thank you for holding my hand, Molly, and getting me through. Small panic, but we're good.
Of course, not a problem. Technology is crazy, so it's good to go. I know I still have tech issues and I use it basically every day, so not a problem. Awesome, and then thank you again for joining us, Diane. There are truly so many reasons why to compost at home, and I constantly feel like I am learning new tips and tricks to compost successfully. So this was amazing, so thank you so much. We have a little bit of time, just a couple questions. Again, reminder to attendees, please put your questions in the Q&A as we are reserving the chat for resources, links, and ideas. A quick question from one of our attendees about kind of what bugs are good in the compost pile. So about, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, is it sow bugs? Are they good in the compost pile? Or
every bug is good in the compost pile. They're there because they're specialized decomposers. I'm not kidding. When I first moved out here, because I grew up back East Coast, I saw these huge grub things that freaked me out. I thought my home must have been built on top of it like an atomic waste site. They're just insane. I said, freak me out now, but now I love them. They are the grubs of the green fruit beetle or the fig beetle, different names for that same beetle, but they're the ones that have the real shiny green coat, and they fly around decomposing fruit. Their babies are these big giant fig monsters, and they eat, again, voraciously. They're breaking things down. Anything that shows up in your compost bin is supposed to be there. Whether you want it there is another question. So you may have critters that you don't want there, but they're all doing their job and they're all excellent decomposers. There's nothing there that shouldn't be there.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. One question, what would you recommend for someone just getting started with composting?
I say start small. I always say that. Walk before you run. Just really start small. And I think worms are so easy breezy. Read our materials. If now the cove is opening up a bit, you can come to the center and see some of the things. It's so much easier. Pictures worth 1,000 words, a visit's worth 1,000 pictures. And so we're happy to show you, but I said, start small. Don't take on the whole enchilada, but eventually you'll compost that whole enchilada after you've eaten all the good parts. Start small.
Awesome, perfect. And then following up with that question, what is one habit you'd like to see our audience adopt, or one takeaway you have for our attendees?
Easy breezy on that one, reduce. This whole thing is about how to manage our waste, and we have a whole lot less to do if we made a whole lot less of waste. So I didn't touch on Food System Alliance with me speaking. I'm sure they're going to talk about the food hierarchy. So composting, first of all, eat it, don't waste it. But if we have extras, things happen. You can feed hungry people, and you feed hungry animals, and then you can create biofuels. You can compost it, always keep it out of the landfill. But Mother Nature wants it back. It should never not ultimately go back to Mother Nature, but let's not create so much waste to begin with.
Awesome ending point. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That's something we love to say at I Love a Clean San Diego. See what you can do first. Any small step helps. So thank you again. And thank you for being a guest speaker again. It's wonderful to hear from the Solana Center. We love hearing about composting. So thank you again, Diane, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, and thank you for doing this. This is a really fun event.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so we have another keyword. So let me go ahead and pull that up for everyone. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Our next keyword is, or this hour's keyword is donate. As a reminder, again, our keywords are important for our opportunity drawing. There will be keywords every hour. We had one at the beginning at 10, now we have one at 11. And to enter into the opportunity drawing, use the Google form in the chat box to enter all of the keywords you hear throughout the event. Each word entered correctly equals 1 entry. You can wait until the end to submit all of your words together. We will select those winners on Friday, June 18th. A quick review on prizes. We have a couple of gift cards and a membership to Refill Stores, eco-friendly laundry detergent, and a custom upcycled art piece. Once again, our second key word of the day is donate. With that, I am going to bring on my co-host, Emily Nelson, the education manager here at I Love a Clean San Diego. She will be hosting the rest of the event and introducing our next guest speaker. So welcome back, Emily.
Thanks, Molly. It's been a fantastic event so far, and the hits just keep on coming. So I am excited to introduce our next guest, who's going to continue the conversation around food waste. So as we just heard, composting is a great step when it comes to recycling the inedible organic waste, but even with options like backyard composting and the anaerobic digester we heard about earlier, the best practice is still buying only what we need and consuming what we have. Here to talk about other options when it comes to reducing your food waste is Sarah Fateh with the San Diego Food System Alliance. The San Diego Food System Alliance promotes collaboration, influences policy, and catalyzes transformation to cultivate a healthy, sustainable, and just food system in San Diego County. Using food as a mechanism for change, the Alliance brings people together from all sectors and advances equitable food policies. Sarah serves as the program manager for the Wasted Food Prevention Program. In her role at the San Diego Food System Alliance, Sarah manages the Save the Food San Diego Eco Challenge, a county-wide consumer education and behavior change campaign for household-level food waste reduction. So in other words, she is an expert in helping us make changes in our homes. She also supports various cities and jurisdictions in San Diego County, providing technical assistance on implementing food waste solutions. So we're going to have questions at the end of her segment. So again, add them into the Q&A throughout the presentation. But with that, I'd like to welcome Sarah and hand it over to her.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Emily. I'll go ahead and get my screen shared for the presentation. And hopefully you can let me know if it's good to go on your side.
Yes, I can see San Diego Food System Alliance slide.
Wonderful. So I'll go ahead and present that. Well, thank you so much, Emily, for the introduction, and good afternoon to all of you attending the Zero Waste Fair. Really excited and happy to be joining I Love a Clean San Diego for this event and for the opportunity to talk to all of you a little bit more about the San Diego Food System Alliance, and then share some solutions that we can all implement to reducing our food waste. So I think Emily provided a really good background, but just to give a little bit of an overview, the San Diego Food System Alliance is a network organization of over 150 multi-sector organizations really committed to this mission of cultivating a healthy, sustainable, and just food system in our region. So together with this network, we're really working on supporting our local farmers and fishermen, ensuring that our low-income communities have access to healthy, quality food, and then ensuring that nothing gets wasted in this system of food in our region. So as kind of a network, we really serve or play this convener role in our region and looking to bring together all of these different food system stakeholders that are doing incredible work on the ground. And our work really gets kind of classified into three key areas. So we work on promoting collaboration, so leading that network development within San Diego County and that regional planning and evaluation efforts for diverse food system issues. We influence policy by conducting a lot of policy advocacy. And then we also really work on catalyzing transformation. And that's where a lot of our specific programming happens. So with the development of educational resources and then organizing different community events. So at the Alliance, we work on a lot of different food system issues. And one of those is actually food waste. And the question that we sometimes get is, well, food waste is that even an issue? You know, why is that an area of focus? And the reality is that we are throwing away food, and not just, you know, small amounts of it. Here in the United States, we actually are wasting about 40% of all of our food that is grown and produced for the purposes of human consumption, which to me is just a statistic that is staggering. And at the Alliance, we really like to take a food systems perspective to kind of all of the work that we do. And food waste is no exception to that. And so using this food systems perspective, we can kind of look at, well, where is food waste coming from? And what this graphic is showing is that food waste actually comes from all levels of the food system. So from production, manufacturing, storage and distribution, but the vast majority of it is kind of heavily skewed to the right here, where most food waste is actually coming from commercial kitchens, or it's coming from households. At 43%, households are considered the greatest generators of food waste. And when I say households, you know, I'm talking about you and I. So we're going to revisit this or kind of come back to this idea later on in the presentation when we talk about what are some of the things that we can do to make an impact. And when we're thinking about, well, what are the impacts of food waste? You know, we can certainly talk about economic impacts and, you know, the dollar value of all of this food that's being thrown away. We can talk about social impacts in terms of, you know, how we're throwing away food at the same time that food insecurity is also a prevalent social issue. But I think since we're at the Zero Waste Fair, I really wanted to spend some time highlighting what the environmental impacts of wasted food are, and how wasting food is also wasting a lot of the natural resources that are going into growing and producing that food. So around 20% of our freshwater, fertilizer, and cropland, you know, is being used to produce food that's ending up in the trash. And around 21% of landfill volume is actually made up of food. Food is actually considered the single largest component of US municipal solid waste, which means if you went to any landfill in America and you looked inside, you would find that it's full of food. And what happens when food just sits and rots in landfill is that it produces methane, which we know is a potent greenhouse gas that's harmful to the environment. And to kind of put that into scale in terms of what those methane emissions look like, if we could represent food waste as its own country, it would actually be considered the third largest greenhouse gas emitter after China and the United States. So we really see that there's a clear relationship here between food waste and climate change, and from that, an even bigger environmental responsibility to do something about it. And so that kind of gets into how the Alliance kind of plays this role of facilitating our wasted food prevention program. So this is where I work alongside one of our colleagues, and our program really focuses on providing comprehensive and specialized services to a variety of food waste stakeholders in our region. So government agencies, institutions, businesses, nonprofits, and residents, all as they're taking these different steps to reduce their food waste. And our work in our program can also be kind of broken out into these three categories. The first is network development. So kind of thinking back to that convener role that the Alliance is playing, the Wasted Food Prevention Program operates and facilitates a wasted food prevention and recovery working group. And that's attended by over 160 organizations across San Diego County that meet quarterly to talk about what are some of the regional food system issues or ways that we can collaborate to really move the needle on that. The second area of our work is technical assistance. So really looking at supporting businesses, institutions, and increasingly cities and jurisdictions as they start to implement some edible food recovery programs or just food waste solutions. And then the last area of our work is consumer education. And this is actually where I'm going to spend kind of the rest of the presentation really focusing on. So with our consumer education work, the primary goal of that is to educate all residents of San Diego County about food waste prevention. And, you know, a lot of our kind of materials and consumer education campaign can kind of be grouped into these four categories in terms of providing information about meal planning, smart grocery shopping, zero waste cooking, and proper food storage. But the idea here is how can we, you know, promote an awareness about the issue of food waste, but then also how do we provide residents with those easy tips, tricks, and strategies for things that they can do at home to actually reduce that food waste. So we think about developing creative and engaging materials that we provide through digital and physical platforms to residents. So an example of that is on the left-hand side of the screen here, you can see this proper food storage refrigerator magnet. So it's this handy guide that folks can reference, you know, when they're bringing their groceries home, how can they store them properly to make sure they extend their life. But you'll notice that with the goal here on the screen that we're really intentional about our use of the phrase food waste prevention. We're not just talking about food waste reduction. And that language, I think, was alluded so wonderfully by Diane in the previous presentation, really comes from the EPA's food recovery hierarchy. And if you aren't familiar with this tool or this resource, it's essentially a way to organize different strategies that help prevent food or divert food from going to landfill. So the ultimate goal of any kind of system that's trying to reduce waste is that we don't want food to end up in the trash. And so what the food recovery hierarchy is doing is taking all of those strategies and organizing them in a way that the strategies at the top of the pyramid are considered highest impact and most preferred, and that are kind of listed in order after that. Now, what I have here on the slide is kind of a simplified version of what that food recovery hierarchy is. But what I wanted to showcase was kind of these categories of the strategies. And those are prevention, recovery, and recycling. So prevention, or sometimes you might hear it as what's called source reduction, is exactly what was referenced before, is how do we prevent that food waste from even being created in the first place? So at a restaurant or business level, how do we teach chefs to maybe produce less during, you know, the meal prep or the meal service times so that they don't have so much left over that they're treating as waste at the end of service? Or at a household level, how can we teach households to purchase only what they need at the grocery store so that they're not over purchasing and then they have, you know, food that's getting forgotten about in their refrigerator? That's really the idea behind this prevention category. And because it's at the top of the pyramid, this is really considered the highest impact and most preferred way to reduce food waste. Excuse me. Now, following that, there are recovery strategies. So can we take any excess food and actually get that connected to organizations or to people that are in need so that it's still being utilized and not going to landfill? And then recycling strategies are at the bottom of the pyramid, and that's taking food waste or food scraps and putting them through composting or maybe through an anaerobic digester. So I think that really here, all of these strategies are important and they all play a critical role in helping prevent that food waste from going to landfill. But within our kind of consumer education work and our consumer education messaging, we really focus on this prevention area and this source reduction area. And we actually had a specific program where we wanted to see, well, is it successful? Is it actually helpful for residents to get education or messaging around food waste prevention? Does that result in any kind of change in their food waste habits? And that's where the Eco Challenge actually came in. So the Save the Food San Diego Eco Challenge was a program that we actually just wrapped up a couple months ago, but was a really innovative social competition that engaged individuals and residents in food waste tracking challenges. So quite literally, we gave people food waste scales. We asked them to weigh and record their food waste over a 15-month period. And then we also, at the same time, were providing them with that messaging or those easy tips, tricks, and strategies on how they can, reduce food waste at the grocery store or incorporate those zero waste cooking habits. And the goal of this was to try to see, in doing those things, can people actually reduce their food waste? If we're getting these data points and measuring their food waste over time, does teaching people about these really concrete strategies result in any kind of behavior change? And what we found is that it does. By the end of the program, participants that had engaged in the food waste tracking components and received that education through emails, newsletters, and social media posts actually had a 38% reduction in their household level food waste compared to when they started the program, which was an incredible result and really helped us kind of establish and feel confident that promoting this kind of consumer education around food waste prevention and source reduction can be a successful mechanism for helping residents reduce their food waste. There's a lot of great information about the Eco Challenge that we have published in a case study on our website that I think will get linked in the chat. So if you're interested in learning more about this specific initiative and learning more about the Eco Challenge, highly recommend that you check out that case study. So kind of bringing all of this back into thinking, well, what do we want you all to leave with from today? The Eco Challenge was, a really specific program, and we're talking about all of these impacts of food waste. What are those easy changes that we can all make in our daily habits that can actually make a difference on the issue of food waste? So what I wanted to leave you all with were some of the strategies that we not only provided in the Eco Challenge program, but that we also incorporate into our consumer education messaging. And I want to just encourage all of you to kind of reflect on some of these tips and think about, do any of these resonate with me? Is one of them something that I can start trying today? And the idea is that we're not saying that it needs to be this huge lifestyle shift, but it's really small things that we can all do that will actually make a huge difference. So I'm going to go through a few tips here, starting with smart grocery shopping. If you're not already doing this, actually having a list when you go grocery shopping. So whether you write it down with pen and paper or you have it up, on your app or on your phone, keeping a list really helps keep you on track in terms of only buying what you need. I know there's a lot of temptation in the grocery store, and sometimes things end up in your cart that you were not planning on being there in the first place. So having a list can help really with that over purchasing at the grocery store. The same thing with eating before going grocery shopping. There's actually a study that found that people who go shopping on an empty stomach end up spending about 64% more than non-hungry shoppers. And I don't know about you, but if I go to the grocery store hungry, everything looks amazing and it's going to end up in my cart. So an easy way to kind of prevent that, impulse buying is to actually just eat a snack before you head out to the grocery store. In terms of meal planning, we like to say in the food waste world that the freezer is really your friend. It's basically a pause button for any fresh fruits or vegetables that you have that you don't want to leave in your fridge until they go bad. You can just put them away in the freezer and then pull them out whenever you need to. Or if you're someone that likes to, cook in bulk, or maybe, meal prep at the beginning of the week, putting that food in your freezer makes it a lot more accessible later on in the week, helps facilitate those meal times, and also ensures the freshness of that food. And something we also like to promote in terms of meal planning is actually planning your meals with really specific recipes in mind. And the reason we say this is because it encourages you to kind of have a plan for how you'll use specific ingredients that you have at home. Or if you want to do the opposite, where you take an inventory of the ingredients you have in your fridge or in your pantry and find recipes that will utilize those items, so that you're not, forgetting about things in your fridge or buying new groceries before you've had a chance to use what you already have. So really encourage you to kind of try these out if you're into that meal planning. And then for all my chefs out there, it's really, sometimes when you're in the heat of cooking, it's not always top of mind to think about, your waste habits while you're cooking, but there are some easy ways that we can incorporate some strategies to help reduce our food waste while we're preparing our meals at home. And the first one is to repurpose our leftovers. I know a lot of times we think about leftovers as sad or gross, or it's the thing that no one wants to eat and it gets pushed to the back of the fridge until it's forgotten. But a lot of times you can actually take leftovers and turn them into a completely new meal. And one of my favorite ways to do that is if you have extra rice left over in your fridge, you can turn that into a fried rice and add any veggies or protein you have in your fridge to that, and making it a completely new meal. So don't ignore your leftovers. They're not as gross as some people may think they are, and actually they're still perfectly good to eat. And then another way that you can kind of utilize some items that typically are thought of as waste is by saving the peels or the scraps from your veggies. So a lot of times trim waste, or onion skins, carrot peels, mushroom stems, things that typically we don't consider as edible, end up getting thrown in the trash. But what I like to do is actually save them in a bag in my freezer, accumulate them over time, and then put them in a pot of water, and you can actually turn them into your own veggie stock. Super delicious, tastes better than the store-bought version, and it'll save you a little bit of money as well. So that's something that you can also kind of start doing really easily. And then the last kind of area of tips that we have here is looking at proper food storage. So one of the best ways to really prevent food waste is to store your food properly to really extend its life. And a lot of times the ways that we buy food from the grocery store isn't always the best way to store it when we get home. Perfect example for that is cilantro or any kind of leafy herbs. Typically, you pick it up from the store in those single-use plastic bags, but it's actually not the best way to store cilantro. The best way to do that is by taking them out of the bag, getting a small jar and filling it with some water and putting the cilantro in there, almost the same way that you would put flowers in a vase. You put that at the top shelf of your fridge, and you'll notice that your cilantro or your parsley or any other leafy herbs are going to last a lot longer than if you just left them in the bag. Similarly with potatoes and onions, a lot of times these end up, people put them together in the same bag, but you want to avoid doing that because putting potatoes and onions together can actually make them sprout faster. So you want to make sure you store those separately in a cool, dark place. Something like a closed pantry would be perfect. And then one kind of food storage tip that I learned recently is how to properly store milk. A lot of people put their milk in the door of their refrigerator just because it fits really nicely there, or they use the milk a lot, so it's accessible if it's in the door. But what people don't realize is that milk, or the door of your fridge, is actually the warmest part. So if you put your milk there, it has a tendency to spoil faster. So we really encourage people to put your milk in the main compartment of the fridge and not the door, to make sure that it's not spoiling, just a week after you bought it. So kind of, wrapping all of this up, all of these tips fall under our consumer education campaign that we call the Save the Food San Diego campaign. And we wanted to name the campaign something that also really serves as a call to action to all residents of San Diego, that we all have a part to play in reducing food waste. It's something that we all do at one point or another. It's not something to feel guilty or ashamed about, but really just implementing these small changes can have a huge impact. So if you felt inspired by any of the tips that I shared, I really encourage you to check out the Save the Food San Diego website, where we have a lot of these tips available, as well as some cool downloadable resources to kind of help you get started with, implementing some of these strategies. So we'll go ahead and share the link for the website in the chat, and really hope you all check that out. And the last thing I wanted to leave you all with is kind of this fun video that we developed recently called 6 Hacks to Waste Less Food, kind of a fun visual way to represent some of these different strategies that I've been talking about. And I'll go ahead and it's a short video, it's just about a minute, but I'll go ahead and play it so that we can take a look at it here. All right. So hope you all enjoyed that video. We would love to get your support in kind of sharing and promoting not only the Save the Food San Diego campaign, but also this resource. So we'll share the link for the video in the chat if you want to share it with friends, family. Let me pull this up really quickly, or even just share it on your own personal social media and tag Save the Food San Diego. But with that, that really concludes my presentation. Thank you all so much for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions now.
Great, thank you, Sarah. We really shouldn't have scheduled this segment right around lunchtime. My stomach is grumbling looking at all that good food. Just for those who were wondering, the sound wasn't shared on the video, but I believe it just has some nice music to it. There's no voice over any information that was missed. So again, the link is in the chat if you want to go back and watch that video and then share it with your networks.
Yes, so sorry about that sound.
Oh, no problem, no problem. So Barbara has a question. What veggies and fruits should not be stored together?
That's a good question. So potatoes and onions is kind of one example of kind of vegetables that shouldn't be put together, like I said, for the sprouting reason. What I would say is that, in your fridge, you have kind of 2 drawers at the bottom. And what people don't realize is both of those drawers actually have different humidity levels. One is considered high humidity and one is low. And there's actually certain fruits and vegetables that do better in the high humidity drawers and certain ones that do better in low. So I think that's actually a good storage kind of strategy to use when you're thinking about how do you put things together in your fridge. And that fridge magnet that I actually shared earlier, that's available as a PDF version on our website. You can download that and look at the guide to see where you should put kind of different types of fruits or vegetables based on those humidity levels. And that's actually a great way of figuring out what, how to store things together. Another easy one is apples and bananas. I think you should also put those separately. Apples do better in the fridge, and then bananas can kind of go on a counter or in a bowl on your dining table. But those are also 2 that you should avoid putting together. But highly recommend you check out kind of the humidity drawer guide to see how to best put fruits and vegetables together.
That's helpful to know it's not just exclusively a fruit drawer and a vegetable drawer. It's really about the climate you're creating.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Another question from an attendee. From the research you've done, is the temptation to buy in bulk to save money part of what's contributing to food waste?
I think that's definitely a component. And we know that, you know, buying in bulk sometimes is the most economical option for some families, right? You know, big box wholesalers like Costco or Sam's Club really have built this model around buying in bulk can be a cheaper way to purchase certain items. So, you know, we like to kind of draw the distinction between, you know, buying in bulk in and of itself doesn't necessarily have to be the problem if we put in mechanisms to make sure that the entirety of that product goes to good use. And a good example that we like to use for that is, like, if you shop at Costco, they sell these huge bags of spinach. There's no way for someone to go through that entire bag before it starts getting wilted. You can still buy that bag of spinach in bulk if that makes financial sense for your family. And what we recommend is maybe taking half of that bag and putting it in the freezer so that the other half in your fridge can be used up while it's fresh. And then the one that's in your freezer, you can pull out and cook with at any time. So we really want to make sure that we're still mindful of how do we put in place these strategies that are aligned or that fit with people's lifestyles, and not saying, you know, buying in bulk isn't something you should do at all. How can we do that a little bit more responsibly?
Absolutely. And one other tip I'll share is finding a friend or a neighbor that you can split something with if it's too big and you can't freeze it. I know there's a lot of groups like Buy Nothing groups on Facebook or Nextdoor where you can connect with others and split some of those bigger items if, again, it is more economical. So we have time for just a few more questions. Will you be running another iteration of the Consumer Eco Challenge? And if so, how can people sign up?
Yeah, it's a frequently asked question that we get a lot. Right now, there aren't any kind of active plans to have like an Eco Challenge 2.0. The first time that we ran it was kind of in a pilot version. We had really specific partner institutions that we were recruiting participants from. And I think we learned a lot from that experience, and there's been a lot of interest in having kind of a similar program. So we're definitely thinking about ways that we can bring some of those successful elements of the Eco Challenge, like having people, you know, track their food waste or providing the messaging. Whether or not it'll be branded as like another Eco Challenge or follow the same program structure is still something to be determined. But we certainly want to look at how we can really continue the success of that program. And if you are interested, are interested in implementing something similar to the Eco Challenge within your organization, kind of as a fun team building activity, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to chat about kind of how we put the program together and provide any resources to help you set that up.
Two last questions for you. The first one is, I know a lot of times people want to support restaurants that are acting responsibly in terms of the food system, who are maybe cooking with root to stock practices, who are trying to mitigate their food waste, and also who might be donating leftover food to those who are hungry. So is there any resource in the region of where those restaurants are located so people can choose to go and support those businesses?
That's a great question. I think something we're interested in developing, like I think the way that restaurants have certain certifications or they have stickers on their window to show that they're affiliated with certain organizations, you know, we would love to create something like that that indicates that a business is, you know, that they have an edible food donation program set up or that they are like cooking root to stock. You know, I think in the absence of that resource right now, the best way is to visit, you know, your favorite restaurant and ask them about what those practices are. And I think that one of the most powerful things about our, you know, with households and with residents is that we really have the power to shift the narrative. If enough customers come into a business and ask them, hey, are you donating your excess product? What do you do with things left over at the end of the day? That really can contribute to that culture shift and help businesses see that this is something that's not only, you know, helpful to their bottom line economically, it's good for their business practices, but it's also something that customers are asking about and want to see. I think that's really going to move the needle in helping more businesses engage in, you know, either creating less food waste, or if they do have it, donating that or making sure it doesn't end up in landfill.
Absolutely. And I think, as you've heard throughout the day today, organics is really front of mind for us as a state and as a local region. So I think we will see more of this down the road. Our last question for you, Sarah, is if you want to just wrap it up and leave us with what's one takeaway you'd like our audience to walk away with today.
I think kind of has been mentioned so far, but a lot of times people think of food waste as very daunting. You know, we hear about the statistics that 40% of food being wasted and the environmental impacts, and it makes people think, well, it's just so big of a problem that there's nothing that we can do about it. But what I really hope people take away is that, you know, we all have the collective impact and the collective power to really make some changes on this issue. And it starts with yourself. You know, pick one of these tips that really stood out to you, if it's smart grocery shopping or storing your food differently, and really challenge yourself to start building those into your household practices. It may seem small and insignificant, but if enough people start doing that, then we're really going to see a shift in this narrative and in this issue. So don't think that this is an insurmountable problem. I really hope that all of you kind of become food waste warriors and start implementing some of these strategies.
Fantastic. So again, thank you, Sarah, from the San Diego Food System Alliance. It was lovely to have you on today, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you so much. You as well.
All right, so we are going to shift gears a little bit. We have had a rich discussion so far this morning on environmental justice and on many facets of organic waste. So for our next segment, I will be reviewing recycling and hazardous waste guidelines and showcasing one of the resources we host at I Love a Clean San Diego called wastefreesd.org. So let me just share my screen and we will get started. Okay, there we go. All right. So for those of you just joining us, my name is Emily Nelson, and I am the Education Manager with I Love a Clean San Diego. Many of you are likely familiar with our organization and have joined us before, but I'd like to provide just a brief overview of who we are and what we do. I Love a Clean San Diego is a county-wide, apolitical nonprofit with a vision of a zero waste, litter-free, and environmentally engaged San Diego region. Our focus is on solid waste reduction, so sending less to the landfill, and also on stormwater pollution prevention. Because we understand that 80% of marine debris starts in inland areas, and that our actions in our neighborhoods and cities impact the health of our waterways and ocean, our programs focus on actions that individuals like you and I can take to reduce consumption, reduce waste, prevent pollution, and protect our environment. While we started as a litter pickup group back in 1954, known as the War Against Litter Committee, we have evolved over the past 65 years to include much more than just cleanups. We engage thousands of people across San Diego County each year to help better our environment. We have 3 major program arms, and I like to think about them as tackling the issues of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. We address the litter already in our environment through our volunteer cleanups. We tackle the current issues of today by providing tens of thousands of recycling referrals and hazardous waste referrals through WasteFreeSD, the resource I'll be sharing with you today, as well as hosting hazardous waste collection events throughout the county. And we look to the future as we educate over 45,000 youth and adults through our community webinars and workshops, our outreach booths, our K-12 classroom presentations, and our hands-on field trips. So if you're looking to get involved, whether that's as a volunteer, if you want us to come and speak to your community group or to your classroom, visit us at cleansd.org. You can find upcoming events and lots of resources. Many common questions that we receive are about recycling and about hazardous waste. People really do want to recycle right, but it feels overwhelming and challenging to know the right things to do. So we're going to do an overview today. I will say that recycling in this context refers to your curbside recycling, or what is often a blue bin. Recycling varies by waste hauler, so with specific items, it does depend who takes away your trash and recycling and also what jurisdiction you're in, but I will provide some general rules that apply throughout San Diego County. So there are 4 major materials that can be recycled. First is paper. So on the left, you see some examples of paper products that can be recycled and are good to go in your blue bin. This includes office paper, whether it's glossy or not, colored, white paper, lined paper, magazines, newspaper, junk mail, cardboard. If you do have cardboard boxes, please flatten them. And then cartons as well. So like almond milk or juice cartons, those are called Tetra Paks. Those are recyclable, as well as typical milk cartons. When it comes to what not to put in your bin in terms of paper, that includes any paper that is soiled or wet. If you were with us earlier today and you heard EDCO speak about their anaerobic digester, you can put food soiled paper products in your green waste if you have EDCO. But if you do not, then those unfortunately have to go into the trash. Additionally, if you have mixed materials, meaning you have a paper product that is coated in plastic, some paper plates are like this. There are also hot coffee cups that have a plastic lining in them. Those unfortunately are not recyclable. And then lastly, with paper, it's important to understand that when you recycle a paper product, every time you do so, the fibers in the paper get a little bit shorter and they reach a point where they are no longer recyclable. So that would include things like facial tissues, napkins, and paper towels. The next item that is recyclable is glass. This includes both colored glass and clear glass, and includes beverage containers and also jars, things like pickle jars or spaghetti sauce jars. Those can all go into your recycling bin. In terms of glass that you do not want to recycle or cannot recycle, that would be drinking glasses, bakeware like Pyrex dishes, and mirrors. Those, unfortunately, if they are broken and no longer usable, do have to be thrown away into the trash. But if they are still usable, we highly encourage donating them so someone else can enjoy them. Okay, so that's paper, that's glass. The third item is metal. Metal includes soup cans, soda cans, aluminum foil, pie tins. And if you have an aerosol can that is empty, so maybe you have hairspray or a whipped cream canister, those can be recycled so long as they are empty. What do you do if they're not empty? I will bring that up in just a minute. When you are recycling metal, pretty much the only thing that you can't put in is if your metal is rusted. Once your metal is rusted, it again becomes trash. So we have our paper, our glass, our metal, and now for everybody's favorite, plastic. Plastic is where it gets a little bit more confusing. So the most simple way to think about it is if you have a plastic bottle or container that can be recycled. This includes items such as water bottles, hard plastic food containers, like if you're purchasing strawberries and they come in a plastic clamshell, or if you're eating yogurt or cream cheese out of a plastic tub, those can be recycled. This also includes many types of takeout containers. I know we are seeing more paper takeout containers nowadays, but if you do have a plastic takeout container, that is recyclable. When it comes to what does not go in your recycling bin with plastic, rules of thumb include if it is smaller than a credit card, like single-use plastic utensils or straws. They are too small to be properly processed at the materials recovery facility or the MRF. So they unfortunately have to go into the trash, which is why it is best to opt for reusable utensils and reusable straws or no straw. Also, if you have soft or film plastic, like plastic grocery bags or Ziploc bags, those cannot go into your blue bin, your curbside recycling. Those have to be recycled separately. The reason is that they are considered a tangler. Again, when our materials are picked up by the recycling truck, they are transported to a MRF or materials recovery facility where the items are separated into like categories. The way that the machinery and the conveyor belts process the material leaves a lot of opportunity for them to be jammed with soft plastic or film plastic. So if we were to add the grocery bags into the recycling, it causes a lot of issues. They have to stop the plant. They have to extract the material. I've heard as often as every 2 hours. And while that's happening, the entire plant is on pause. So that limits how much they're able to recycle. And that is also a cost add as well. So we want to do our best as consumers to reduce the contamination that we are adding to our recycling bin. If you have film plastic, you can recycle it in separate collection containers. So you may have seen this in stores like Target, where at the front of the store, they have a bin, you can drop off your plastic bags. Many grocery stores have them as well. That is an okay way to recycle them. Those go to a different facility where they are properly processed. So that's the difference there. If you've noticed, especially over the last year, I know there have been many changes as to which stores are accepting film plastic. You can check out Waste-Free SD. Again, I'll share more about that in a moment, but we at I Love a Clean San Diego are regularly calling stores to see if they are still accepting the film plastic, since there is a high demand for recycling those materials. Okay, the last piece with plastics, we've talked about it a little bit throughout the day, would be bioplastics. So those are materials that look and act like plastics, like maybe a plastic cup, but they are made out of plant-based materials, often like corn. Those unfortunately cannot be recycled. And as you heard earlier, can also not go in your anaerobic digester and don't typically do very well in backyard composting. So those generally have to go to the landfill as well. I know that was a lot of information, so let me recap. So with plastics, if it is a container or a bottle, it can go into your recycling bin. If it is a film plastic, or if it is smaller than the size of a credit card or bioplastic, it should not go in your blue bin. One question we often receive is about bottle caps. If you keep a bottle cap attached to your bottle, then it will get recycled. So we do recommend keeping your lids attached to your bottles. So overall, we want to avoid wish cycling, which is when you're unsure, so you just add it to the recycling bin, hoping that it'll be recycled. That again slows down the process, can contaminate other items that were recyclable that now have to be thrown away. So it is best to just recycle right. What does that mean? We have 3 rules for how to recycle right across the county. So first, we want our items to be empty. Clean out any food residue and make sure that smaller items are not tucked into large ones. So if you're concerned about using water to clean out recyclables, your spatula is going to be your best friend. That is a great way to reduce water usage and also remove residue properly. You can see the picture of the peanut butter jar is a good example of how clean your recyclables need to be. Number 2 is to keep it dry. So if you do rinse it out, make sure it has time to dry. And third, keep your recyclables loose. That means do not bag your recyclables. As we just discussed, those bags gum up our machinery. So keep your recyclables empty, dry, and loose. Beyond recycling, another category of waste that needs to be kept from the landfill is household hazardous waste. You may have also seen the term universal waste or electronic waste or e-waste. So these are items that are labeled as toxic, poisonous, corrosive, flammable, combustible, or are otherwise dangerous to your health and the environment if they're mishandled. They must be disposed of carefully, and it is illegal actually to dump them in the environment or throw them into the landfill. So examples include paint, motor oil, tires, batteries, fluorescent tubes and bulbs, thermostats, those aerosol cans that are not empty if they still have, like spray paint in them. And any electronic waste include computers, monitors, TVs, microwave ovens, cell phones, mixed wires and cords, or other electronic equipment. So these must be disposed of at designated recycling centers or household hazardous waste collection centers. They should never be discarded in your sink, in a storm drain, or in your regular trash. In particular with batteries, what happens if you throw your batteries into the trash? When the trash truck is compacting the trash, that can sometimes cause fires. If there is a fire, then that trash truck has to do an emergency dump just on the side of the road wherever they are. And not only is that an environmental issue, that's also a safety issue for that driver. So please, please make sure that your hazardous waste is handled properly. So if you have questions about where to take hazardous waste or what's recyclable, or where to find repair shops or where to buy in bulk or other zero waste tips, allow me to introduce you to wastefreesd.org. So this is a zero waste database and hotline that I Love a Clean San Diego hosts for the community for free. It allows residents throughout the county to find solutions for reusing, recycling, repairing, donating, or properly disposing of all types of items. It's a one-stop shop. And again, you can either go online to wastefreesd.org or you can call us at 1-800-237-BLUE. I will share this number again at the end of the presentation so you have time to write it down. I will say that if you have an odd item, a unique item, or a significant quantity of a specific item, the hotline is the best place to get that handled. Our hotline staff do a fantastic job of researching and connecting those who have an item and those who need an item. So just a couple of examples. We had someone call with a significant amount of beanbag beads, and those were connected with a children's charity. The VA hospital reached out. They had over 1,000 medical projector slides and a bunch of cases for those slides, and we were able to help them donate those to the Grossmont Bio Department. So a lot of zero waste success stories. So what I'd like to do right now is I would like to actually bring up Waste for SD so you can see the webpage, and I am going to walk through how to navigate through it. So when you are on wasteforsd.org, you will see this menu over in the corner, different pages to navigate to, and then you'll see a search bar. So you can come down here, and if you have an item that you are looking to, again, dispose of or repair, you can search it here. We're going to search for a refrigerator, and you'll see that options pop up below. So I'm going to select refrigerator. Zip code, I'm going to put in this particular zip code because of the next field. When it says community, some zip codes are parts of several different jurisdictions. And this is very important because where you can take materials often depends on what jurisdiction you're in. So for today, we are going to be part of the unincorporated part of Escondido. Next, you can select what you would like to do with this item. Are we looking to recycle or dispose, repair, or donate? For now, let's click recycle and dispose. And then how did you hear about the event? Many options. If you heard about it from today's event, you would select community outreach with our presentation today. You click find, and your results are populated in two ways. First, at the top, you will see a map with different locations available. We can click on those and see the name of the location, their contact information, and the link to their website. If you would prefer to view this as a list, just scroll down and you will see different options listed here. So we have EDCO, we have quality recycling, and you'll note that there are specific items to pay attention to listed on the side. So recycling fees apply. This one, quality recycling in Poway, has a recycling refund. That's interesting to me, so I'm going to click on view more information. That takes me to another page with more details about this location, phone number, hours that they're open, and then they have a link to see what items are accepted and not accepted. So if I'm taking the refrigerator, it's a great time for me to click here and see, okay, what else do they collect? Oh, they also take aluminum cans. I've been collecting those. I didn't know where to take them. I'll take them both together on the same day. I'm going to navigate back to our results page. So if you're here on the results page and you decide, you know, instead of recycling, let's see if I can get this repaired, you just click the repair filter. That will adjust the results that you have here. And now we can find somebody to fix our fridge instead of recycling it. There's one more item that I'm going to show you. So let's navigate back to the home page. You can always do that by clicking on the logo in the top left corner. If you come to Waste for SD and you don't quite know what to look for, but you're interested to see what's available, right under the search bar, you see here it says select common items. Click on that, and that will pull up a menu of items that we have in our database. So that includes things like energy efficiency rebates, things you might not think of right off the bat. Sporting goods, wood, yard debris, textiles, lots of different information. We're going to click on paper because this is an example of if you don't remember if something's recyclable or not, what do you do? So let's go down to paper cups. We clicked on paper cups. We go back in, we type in our zip code. This time we're going to go to a place where it is just the city of San Diego. We're looking to recycle or dispose. How did we hear about the event or the web page? Click find. And then for our paper cup search, you'll see that it says residential black trash bin. So that means that this is not recyclable for you. You must put it into the landfill based on your jurisdiction. There are also tips on the side on how to reduce this item. So we want to reduce what we're sending to the landfill overall. So suggestion here is to bring a reusable cup with you when you go to coffee shops. I just heard recently that Starbucks is allowing reusable cups again by the end of the month. So for anyone who visits Starbucks, I know that's an exciting change after the last year. Okay, so one more thing that I'd like to show you is our resources page. So from any page on Waste-Free SD, you can navigate to it by clicking on resources. We put up periodic resources about very specific items. So you can see here we have household cleaners, paint recycling, fluorescent light bulb and tube recycling. So I want to show you one in particular. If you scroll down to the second row, we have one called the right way to recycle curbside. Like I mentioned, recycling varies based on waste hauler, and we know this is a challenge in our region, so we've consolidated this information into one location. So if you scroll down, you'll see the reminder for empty, dry, and loose, and then we have information for each of the major local waste haulers. So here's info for EDCO, and you can click on it to navigate to their page. We have Waste Management's recycling guide, Republic Services recycling guide, and then the City of San Diego Environmental Services Department. So again, many resources on the resource page. So I encourage you to come here and explore. You can use filters or you can just scroll through and find new information. So with that, I'm going to put up the contact information one more time for Waste-Free SD. So that is wastefreesd.org. The phone number is 1-800-237-2583. And I'd like to invite Molly back on screen to see if we have any questions from the audience on recycling, on hazardous waste, or any programs that I Love a Clean San Diego runs.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily. Yes, we have lots of questions. So before a couple of those questions, I want to kind of do a general overview. So there were some questions on specific things with recycling. So I want to do a quick overview and a couple quick clarifying questions. So for caps on items like almond milk cartons or glass jars that have metal lids, so things that are different materials, is it best to keep those lids on, or do you have to throw them away?
The general rule of thumb that I tend to hear is to keep them on.
Okay, perfect. And then there was another question about, what about if you have a large plastic bag that you use to hold recyclable items in the recycling bin, even if they're kept loose and not tied?
So if, for example, at home, you want to keep your recycling bin clean so you have it lined, that's totally fine to do. Just when you go to take that to your dumpster or to your curbside bin, just shake out your container and so the items fall in loose, and keep that bag in your at-home container. So just dump them into the outside container loose.
Perfect. Awesome. And then what about labels on canned goods or different items?
You can leave those on.
Okay, perfect. And then a couple other questions about items that are made out of two materials. So like boba drink cups or tofu plastic cartons or Kleenex boxes that may have plastic on the top, but either paper or plastic on the bottom.
So I'm trying to think of a succinct way to answer this. Maybe I'll just run through each of those examples. So with the tofu containers, you have the plastic container on the bottom, the hard plastic container, firm plastic, and then there's a film layer usually on the top that you peel back. What I would say is since you're already opening it, just peel it off, throw it away. Same with the boba cup, I would recommend pulling the film off. But I know I've asked EDCO in the past, and they suggested with the Kleenex box, you don't need to go in and tear that out. Or another example would be if you have an envelope that has the little plastic window in the front so you can read the address, you don't need to tear that out either. It usually is processed. So I think if you forget to take, the top off your tofu container, that's still fine. I would still put it in there.
Okay, awesome. And then there were a couple questions from people wondering where our recyclables are being taken after they're taken to the MRF. Kind of what happens to our recyclables if they're actually being recycled. Someone gave an example that someone lives in a different state, one of their family members, and they said that those recyclables might not be going to a recycling facility.
Great question. So kind of what the process is like is at home, you recycle, you put your items in your container, that gets picked up, that gets transported to a MRF, like I've mentioned, the material recovery facility. Since we have commingled recycling and we put all of our materials in the same container, the MRF is there to separate it back out. So cardboard with cardboard, aluminum cans with aluminum cans, and they create bales of like materials. So at the end, you'll see a large bale of squashed aluminum cans together, as an example. Those then are picked up and transported to different factories, which then will process the material. So it gets a little different depending on the material itself. There's a great resource from Keep America Beautiful. I believe the website is I Want to Be Recycled. I think that's what it is. I'll look and we can maybe put it in the chat later. But it's a good depiction of generally how each material is processed. So for example, I know plastics a lot of times are melted down. Metals are also melted down as well. And then those are turned back into items that can be used by manufacturers who are creating post-consumer recycled materials. A lot of questions have come up about, are my items actually being recycled? Because a few years ago, I want to say it was 2016, China, who was the recipient of most of our recycled materials, they greatly increased restrictions on how much contamination they are accepting. So that really threw a wrench into our recycling systems. Since that time, we have seen other recycling markets open up. I know that many of those have been in Southeast Asia. There have been some horror stories you may have heard in the news where shipping containers were turned away and sent back to the US because of high levels of contamination. And I've heard concern about, are our recyclables going to the landfill? I cannot speak for other areas of the country, but I can say that in San Diego, that is not the case. Fortunately, many of our waste haulers pivoted very quickly to either reduce contamination by hiring additional staff to have sorting at the MRF to reduce that contamination, to have more robust messaging and like the Recycle Right campaign. So our recyclables are not being sent to the landfill here in San Diego. And if you have questions on, where are your materials going? I know it does depend on where you live. For example, there is a aluminum recycling facility on the East Coast, and there is one in South Korea. So if you live on the West Coast, chances are it's going to South Korea. If you live, east of the Mississippi, chances are that is going to the East Coast in the United States.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily. So we do have a lot more questions, but we only have time for one more. But I want to just let you know there are some specific questions on here about USB cords, metal recycling. I would definitely recommend going over to wastefree.org or calling the number just to kind of figure out if you have some of those very specific items. But I wanted to ask you, Emily, one more question. What is one habit that you'd like to see our audience adopt, or one takeaway that you have for our attendees?
It's so hard to pick just one. I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record from earlier speakers, but really reduction is the name of the game. So it's important that we have things like recycling and hazardous waste facilities to process materials that we do create, but as much as we can avoid or eliminate or reduce, that's really going to be the best thing overall. That, and my other takeaway is go to wastefreesd.org and click around on the different categories that we have. I think you'll probably learn something.
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much. And if you do have any trouble finding anything on that website, you are also more than welcome to call. The staff that kind of is in charge of that hotline are very knowledgeable, and they can help you with a specific item that might not be as one of the categories. Okay, so that's all the questions that we have for today. So thank you so much, Emily. I'm going to go ahead, turn my camera back off and pass it back over to you.
Sounds great. Thanks, Molly. Okay, so it is noon, which means it is time for another keyword. The keyword for now is sustainability. Sustainability. So as a reminder, these keywords are for our opportunity drawing. We have a few prizes that we will be giving away. can show you those on the screen. So that includes some gift cards to local refill stores, a custom upcycled art piece that was made with items rescued from the landfill, and also some eco-friendly detergent. So go to the Google Forms link that is posted in the chat. You can enter your keywords from today, and each entry, each keyword that you include is one entry into the drawing. We will be selecting the winners on Friday, June 18th. So again, our keyword for this hour is sustainability. Okay, so let me just shift gears out of presenter mode and get ready to welcome our next speaker. So recycling is a great foundation to a zero waste lifestyle, but there is so much more that we can do to significantly reduce our overall waste production. Our next guest has taken these steps to create an environmentally conscious closet and is sharing her journey for others to join. Megan McSherry is a sustainability educator, creator, and the voice behind Acteevism. She received a Master's of Science in Global Supply Chain Management from USC and has a background in supply chain management in the fashion industry. With the goal of equipping and inspiring individuals towards more sustainable living and collective climate action, she strives for progress, not perfection, every day. Megan has been on a slow fashion journey since 2015 and will be speaking about the importance and benefits of thrifting, loving what you already have, and supporting sustainable brands. So welcome, Megan.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
So just to start it off on a fun note, to help our audience get to know you, if you were an article of clothing, a shoe, or an accessory, what would you be and why?
I feel like I would be a jean jacket. I feel like it's just a classic item in your closet. I have one that I wear probably 3 or 4 times a week. It's just my absolute favorite item. And I feel like it's a good investment piece. It's like something you think about adding to your closet and it stays there forever.
Awesome. A classic, you can't go wrong. So tell us a little bit about your own closet. What's your personal style and your own personal wardrobe approach?
So I kind of call myself a maximalist outfit repeater. I absolutely do not have a minimalist closet. I love fashion. I've always loved fashion, and I never wanted to feel limited by the amount of clothes that I had. But I also know that having a huge closet with a ton of clothes that you never wear is not sustainable. So I wear all of the clothes that I have in my closet. Some I wear just during certain seasons, and some I just wear all the time. Everything in my closet gets some love, but there is a lot of stuff in there.
And I think that's really good for us to know, right? Our capsule closets don't have to all look the same, or, you know, sustainability doesn't look the same for everyone. We talked about that earlier when we were discussing environmental justice and how there are things that people do in their own lives that are environmentally friendly that they might not even consider. So tell us just a little bit, maybe like a brief overview of some of the major concerns with the fashion industry and how it relates to sustainability.
Yeah, so the first major issue, and I think maybe the biggest issue with fashion, is waste. There is a ton of waste that comes from the fashion industry. And that comes from the speed of production. Like most fashion now is fast fashion. It's created quickly. It's designed to fall apart after a few wears, and it ends up in the landfill. And it's designed to end up in the landfill. It's so cheap, like a $3 tank top from a fast fashion store. You're not looking at that as a piece that you're going to have in your closet for a long time. You're looking at it as something that you can wear, and then once you're done, you can just throw it away because it wasn't worth much. So waste is a huge issue. Textile waste is an issue all around the world. I mean, I think in the US, the statistic is like the average person throws away 68 pounds of textile waste a year, which is wild. I mean, that was just a crazy statistic. So, and then you also think about donations. So a lot of us donate our clothes when we're done with them to thrift stores, and only about 20% of the clothes that we donate to thrift stores are actually sold in thrift stores. The rest are shipped off to other countries where they're sold on secondhand markets, and the waste also builds up there because not everybody wants a 2010 soccer team shirt from some random city in the US. So waste is a big issue. Pollution is also a big issue that relates to the environment, especially with water. There's a lot of toxic wastewater that goes into dyeing clothing, and it just gets released into local waterways that people around the world rely on for cooking and drinking and cleaning. And then the last thing is just the ethics of production. It's a very labor-intensive industry. Every item of clothing is made by hand, and the pay is not fair, the working conditions are unsafe, and it's just another issue on top of the environmental issues.
Absolutely, and that's a theme I continue to see. Our environmental issues and our social issues are linked. They're not separate.
Absolutely.
So for our audience, we're going to be doing just a Q&A for Megan's whole time with us today. So if you have questions, feel free to add them and I'll ask them as they come up. So we might jump around a little bit, but I think it'll be a good discussion. So our first question is from Kristen. She says, what would you suggest one do with all of the free t-shirts in your closet, like that soccer shirt you were just talking about?
Yes. So first of all, and I think this is a theme that's been talked about all day today, is reduce in the first place. If you go to an event and they're giving out free t-shirts, maybe say no, like, you know, thank you, but here you can have it back, or just don't take it in the first place. Something else I would consider as a reduction method is trying to talk to your school or your sports teams and try to not have years or dates on the t-shirts, because then if it's just a team t-shirt or a school t-shirt, you can wear that for a long time and for multiple seasons instead of it just being a one and done, something you don't want to wear the next year. As for what to do with them if you have them in your closet, because we all do, there are a number of different things. There are some textile recycling facilities that will take cotton t-shirts. Textile recycling isn't widely available. It's not a very developed technology, and so that isn't always an option for everybody, but that is an option. Cotton t-shirts, if it's just 100% cotton, is easier to turn into a recycled fiber than mixed materials if it's like cotton and polyester blend. I also saw a TikTok of somebody who bought an ottoman cover, like the little poof that you sit on, and they stuffed it with old t-shirts and like things like used underwear, like stuff that they weren't going to donate or use and didn't want to throw away, and instead of buying stuffing. So not only was it less expensive, but it's an interesting way to actually use items in a useful way without sending them to the landfill. You can also cut up t-shirts into cleaning rags. Like I use some of them in my kitchen instead of paper towels. You can wash them, you can reuse them for a long time. It doesn't matter if they have weird dates or logos on them. So you can get creative, but yeah, always try to say no to the free t-shirts if you can.
And I know Pinterest is full of ideas on how to reuse t-shirts. I've seen everything from taking a t-shirt and cutting it and turning it into an apron, which would be great, you know, especially if you're working with kids or something really messy. So a question tying into this, merch is important for organizations and nonprofits to raise money and to sustain themselves. So instead of t-shirts or kind of the usual giveaways, do you have any suggestions instead?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say try to find something that's useful to the people that you're trying to sell to as part of your fundraiser. So I think a lot of places do like water bottles with the logo on it, or pens with the logo on it, t-shirts with the logo. And while those are great, I think we all have a lot of those things. I know I have way too many water bottles, and almost all of them have some random company logo on it. And as much as I loved supporting that company, it's another water bottle that I have with a logo on it. So I think you just have to get creative. Maybe make it an experience or a t-shirt that isn't specifically bound by a date, or have a big logo, like put the logo on the side of the t-shirt or on the back and have like a saying or your company's motto or something on the front. So it's something more universal and not something that people will just buy for the fundraiser. Like you want it to be something that people wear and use for a long time.
I like that you brought up experiences. I was reading an article on this same vein, and they were talking about, you know, if you're at a conference, instead of giving away a plastic Frisbee with your company name on it, if you give someone free headshots or a massage or a meal, they're going to remember you, and they are going to spread the word of mouth pretty positively.
Definitely.
So I know that you recently released an ebook, and in there you talk about doing a closet audit and kind of assessing what you have as a first step. So can you tell us what that process is like? What do you measure and what do you look for?
Yeah, so I love closet audits because you can really do whatever you want and you can get any information out of it that you want. So I'm a bit of an Excel nerd. So I made a very large spreadsheet where I took a ton of information and I went through every single item in my closet. And the information that I recorded was like a little description of the item. So I knew what I was talking about, the brand name, where it was made, the material makeup, whether it was a natural material, a mixed material, synthetic material, the care instructions, whether it had to be dry clean only or hang dried, or if I could just throw it in whatever laundry, things like that, how often I wear it, how long I've had it. And I think nobody has to do all of those things. I had like sheets and sheets of data on Excel just because I love that. And I found it really interesting. I was fascinated to find out that like 75% of my closet was thrifted. And some of the items that I've had the longest were like absolutely not sustainable items. It was my One Direction t-shirt from like my first concert back in high school. But I've had that almost 10 years now. And that's like the true idea of sustainable fashion. It's having things for a really long time and loving them regardless of where you buy them. So a closet audit is a great way to kind of understand what you already own and even some of your shopping habits, how long you own items, if you circle them out of your closet really often. And it's just a great way to learn a bit more about your closet and what you have.
So speaking of shopping and adding new things to our closet, what is that process like for you? What questions do you ask yourself before purchasing an item? What do you look for when deciding to support a brand? And kind of how do you classify an item as sustainable?
Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of questions that I ask myself before buying something. And the first question is, do I need to buy this new or can I buy this secondhand? And I find that a lot of times I don't need to buy an item new. I've become a huge user of like those secondhand apps, Poshmark and Depop and even Mercari. Like I needed a tighter white t-shirt. All of the ones that I had were super baggy and I needed a more fitted t-shirt. So instead of looking on a new sustainable website, even though that would be a sustainable option, I found one on Poshmark for like $10. So not only does it save me money, but it didn't require any new resources to be used to make that t-shirt, and I was extending its useful life. So the first question is always, does it need to be new? Like underwear needs to be new, but otherwise most things can be found secondhand. Other questions I ask are, if I'm going to buy it new, do I know the brand? What do I know about them? How do they produce things? Where is it made? Do I know what material it's made of? Another important one is, do I know how to take care of this item so that it lasts a long time? So a lot of times, and I know we've all been there, you wash an item once and it shrinks and you can never wear it again. And so I always try to pay attention to those care tag items, and I try to avoid like dry clean only or things that are really difficult to care for, because I want those items to be worn a lot and I don't want to have to bring it to a dry cleaner all the time, because not only is that extra effort, but that's not sustainable. And I think what it comes down to is I have the ability to buy items from sustainable brands new. It's not a financial or a access that I struggle to achieve, but that's not the same for everybody. There's a lot of sustainable fashion brands that aren't size inclusive, don't carry anything past the size extra large, or are just way too expensive and people aren't able to make that investment. So you can buy something sustainably with a sustainable mindset from a store that maybe isn't sustainable. So just asking yourself a ton of questions like, how long am I going to wear this? Do I need to buy new things to wear this with? Or do I already own something similar? Or could I look for it at a thrift store? Or is it okay if I buy this $10 t-shirt from a fast fashion brand if I'm going to wear it a lot? So it's all about having a sustainable mindset. If you're able to buy it from a sustainable source, even better. But I think so much of sustainable fashion is how you think about your purchases and not just where you're buying.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. One of the questions that came in is, can you repeat some of the secondhand websites like Poshmark? Can just list those out, and then Val, maybe if you could add them into the chat as well, so we have that recorded.
Yes, so Poshmark is a great one. It's an app. Depop is also an app similar to Poshmark. ThredUp is also a great online thrift store. I think they call themselves the largest online thrift store. Mercari is another app. I think it's more like household items, little knickknacks, but there's also clothing on there as well. Those are the main ones that I use. eBay also has great secondhand items. You just have to make sure that it's actually a used item and not something being drop shipped or something that's brand new.
Great. You were talking a little bit about care for your clothes. One of our attendees asked, what would you recommend for sustainable laundry detergent?
Great question. I think there's a lot of great options. Something that I try to think about as like a general rule is finding something like a detergent that is concentrated in some way. A lot or a big percentage of the ingredients in laundry detergent is also often water. It's the same with like shampoo and hand soap. So you don't need that big of a container for laundry detergent if most of it's water, and you could just get your own water. So I use drops. They're little detergent pods, and you just throw them in. They're like Tide Pods, but they're made with cleaner ingredients. They ship zero waste, plastic free. I think they're really cost effective. There are also laundry strips that are like, they look like a dryer sheet, but you just put them in with your laundry. They obviously have no water. They're very light, so they're sustainable if you're shipping them anywhere. And there are some laundry detergents, I think like Dirty Labs is a concentrated liquid. So you just pour in a tiny little bit into a cap, and it's like a third of the size or even smaller than a regular detergent bottle, but it lasts much, much longer because it's concentrated. And then I also think with laundry in general, washing on cold, most of your clothes will be able to handle that and they still get clean, and that uses less energy because you're not heating up the water. And hang drying or air drying things as much as you can, it breaks down the fibers less if you don't put things through the dryer, so your clothes will last longer.
When you hang dry, do you ever have issues with your clothes getting stiff? And if so, what do you do to prevent that?
Yes, so especially with like denim, I hang dry all my jean shorts and my jeans, and they definitely get stiff when they dry. And that's just something I feel like you have to wear it around for a little bit and it gets comfortable again. I haven't found anything to prevent that from happening, but it doesn't bother me a ton. I just kind of like, crinkle it up between my hands or wear my jean shorts around and they go back to normal.
Perfect. Okay. So do you have any favorite brands that have a circular economy that you'd like to recommend?
Yes. So 4 Days is a really cool brand, and I like them not only because they're circular, but also because they're affordable. So the way that they work is they make basics, like a lot of t-shirts, sweatpants, sweatshirts, tank tops, dresses, I think even now, and they're made from organic cotton or recycled cotton. And the way that it works is you buy an item, and once you're done with it, or you've ripped a hole in it, or you just can't wear it anymore, you can send it back to them. 4 days, like FOR days is how you spell it. So you can send the items back to them and they will recycle them and use it as material in their new items. And you get a discount on your next item. So once you kind of buy into that circular economy, their items are less expensive going forward. I also find that their items are really high quality. I have some great t-shirts from them that I know are going to last for years. And it's cool to know that once I'm done with them, I can send them back and know that they will be recycled into that circular economy.
Perfect. So 4 days. We got that FOR days. Thanks, Val, for posting that link in the chat. Okay. So I want to shift just a little bit to, we've talked a little bit about sourcing clothes and what you think through in that end of the process. When it comes to donation, you touched on this at the beginning, textile recycling is not always an option or a great option. So one of our attendees asked, is there a better option than donating to thrift stores?
Yeah, so there are a few things that I try to do before I donate things to thrift stores. First, see if there are people in your life or in your friend circle or family that are looking for the items that you no longer want, especially if they're in good quality and can be worn for longer. You can do a clothing swap, or you can just give them to your friends as a gift. Those are always really fun. I always find that reselling on an app like Depop or Poshmark, you know it's going to a person who wants that item, and they're not just like, you're not just like throwing it out into a thrift store. It's going to somebody directly who's going to wear it. You don't always know that they're going to wear it for a long time, but I find that that's a better option than donating to a thrift store.
Mm-hmm.
You can also look for local organizations. Like if you have business clothes, like I had some when I was done with school, I donate those to Dress for Success. They take only business clothes and they give those to people who are in need of business clothes. You can also look at local LGBTQ centers or homeless shelters. They often have specific needs, like t-shirts of a certain size or like work appropriate clothing. And whenever you can donate to a place that has a specific need and you can meet that need, that's always a great option. And thrift stores aren't like not an option. Like don't completely write them off your list of places to donate. Just when you do donate to thrift stores, make sure you're not dumping off your entire closet, and make sure that you're donating clothes that are wearable, things that don't have stains, things that don't have holes, things that you would look at in a thrift store as something you would want to buy, and not something that's like gross and way overused and just not wearable anymore.
And I know that you shared before on your page that you sometimes have found in thrift stores there are items that have a small hole or a small defect. You still think that's worth buying and then mending because it's wearable. So don't count it out before it's completely expired.
Yes.
So when you're talking about donating specifics, I think that's great to really get the item into the hands of someone who needs it. Questions that we received often are about shoes, if you have any resources for shoes, or intimates like gently used bras.
Yes. So off the top of my head, I don't know what the organization is called, but there is an organization that accepts bras and redistributes them, like mends them, fix them up if they need to be, and redistributes them to, I believe, victims of domestic violence or just women in need. So that's a great way to try to find a direct need. I think if you look up like recycle bras or donate bras, you'll find the organization. Shoes are tricky. I know there's an organization, Souls for Souls, like soles of the shoe for souls, like your heart. And they redistribute those shoes, so bring them to places, a lot of times internationally, donating to people that don't have shoes or are in need of shoes. But shoes are really difficult. I used to work in the footwear industry, and just because there are so many different materials in footwear, they're hard to repair. And they like kind of once they reach the end of their life, that's the end. They can't really be recycled because they can't be torn apart. So yes, but Souls for Souls is an option.
Great. And we often talk about sustainable fashion when we think about our clothing and accessories. But what about textiles and other areas of our lives, like bedding, towels, or rugs?
Yes, so those all kind of have similar issues in terms of environmental impacts, like waste, water from dyeing, all of that. I think a great way to look at things like bedding is to look at it as an investment. It's something that you sleep in once a day, hopefully, for 8 hours or a good period of time. You spend a lot of time in your bed, and so you want to look at that as something that you can invest in. I just bought sheets from a brand called Buffy. I've been using the sheets that I've had since my freshman year of college and decided, it's been 6 years. It's probably time to invest in something that's a little bit higher quality and will last me a long time. So mine, I know there are sheet options that are made from like eucalyptus fibers. That's a more regenerative crop than cotton and uses less water. I know there are like kitchen towels that also use like eucalyptus, things like that. And you can also reuse things. Like I was talking about before with t-shirts, you can cut it into scraps and use that as a washcloth or to clean in your kitchen. Yeah, so just looking at the materials, I think is the biggest thing with those other kinds of textiles, maybe things that are washable or things that are easily mendable or something that you know is a natural material and can break down at the end of its life.
Great, thank you. And I know that many animal shelters will often take used, kind of worn out towels as well. So we have just about a minute left, but I have 2 questions for you. So let's see if we can get them both in. So one from an attendee, they asked, if you had to choose, would you pick organic textiles or fair trade manufacturing, and why?
Ooh, good question. You know, whenever I talk about fashion, I feel like I say that it comes down to your own personal values. And like there are some people who are vegan and will never use an animal fiber, even wool or something like that. Whereas I don't have a problem using something like wool because I know it's going to last a long time, or real leather because it's not a plastic alternative. So it comes down to your personal values. I personally, well, in the best of worlds, I would try to find a fair trade cotton. But since that's not always an option, I probably would go for the organic cotton, though I know fair trade is important, but it just really comes down to your personal values.
Great. And also understanding that, you know, thinking of end of life is important because that impacts other people as well. Okay, so to close it out, can you leave us with one tip or trick or takeaway that you'd like our audience to have today?
Yes. My biggest takeaway is to understand and remember that the most sustainable clothing is what you already own. Like there's no new sustainable item. There's nothing is more sustainable than what's already hanging in your closet. So wear that stuff, make it last as long as possible, learn to mend, learn to put new buttons on or fix a small hole, and just remember that you already have the most sustainable options.
Awesome. Thank you, Megan. We really appreciated you sharing your knowledge and experience with us today. So again, she runs a blog and is on Instagram under the name Acteevism. We've linked that in the chat earlier during the segment. So if you want to check her out and learn more, I would encourage you to do so. So thanks again, Megan.
Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, bye-bye. There's so much that goes into zero waste living, and sometimes it can feel a little bit overwhelming and it might seem a little unattainable. So our next guests are going to help myth bust that. They have been living a zero waste lifestyle for the past 6 years and are here to share about that journey and answer your questions. Frederica and James, along with their 3 children, Bella, Noah, and Liam, have embraced the zero waste lifestyle since 2015. After a few years of trial and error, creative adjustments, and mindset shifts, they have made low waste living work in their central San Diego home. Through the learning process, they have compiled their findings and advice in their blog, YouTube channel, and practical guidebook. So they are known as the Zero Waste Family. And during our time today, it will again be primarily Q&A. So if you have questions, please add them throughout the segment. They're a great resource on specific shifts if you have specific questions, but also the environmental, mental, and economic benefits of mindful living. So Frederica and James, while the audience is submitting their questions, do you want to take a few minutes and introduce yourself and tell us how you got started with your zero waste journey?
That'd be great. Yeah. Welcome. Thank you. And first, let me just say before we jump into us, what an amazing day this has been. Yeah. I am so impressed, as Frederica and I talked about preparing for today and all the things that we've done in our journey. So many of the things have been touched on today, from the clothing to the composting to rethinking recycling and rethinking buying. I mean, it was what a wealth of information today. So we're really excited to be here.
Okay, so yes, we are the Zero Waste Family, and we're a family of 5. And we have been zero waste since 2015, where James here decided that we are going to be a zero waste family, and he removed our trash can and he moved it into actually the hallway, which doesn't seem like a very far away. But it actually gave us a moment to reflect on anything we brought into the house, because we didn't have automatically put it in the trash and it disappeared. We actually have to think about everything and how can we reduce our waste? And that is how our journey began. But it actually began way before that. In 2006, that is when we became parents. I've been an environmental writer for 20 plus years. And so I thought I did my part. And it's kind of funny that I wrote about saving environment. But once I had children, it became much more clear that I needed to do way more, because this was her planet that I needed to save for her. And I keep saying that my children or our children are the biggest motivators that we have to actually do this, because I want to give them the very best, and a healthy planet will be part of that, obviously. So, James, you want to?
Yeah, that's right. And I think, you know, I was the reluctant participant in this journey, right? I think that at first I had a busy job, and at first, as we went through these challenges, it felt like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of work, or oh, I don't know about this change. But slowly, as I realized, number one, a lot of these changes and swaps weren't as hard as I thought. They weren't as time consuming, they weren't as challenging. It just caused us to kind of think differently. And it actually started saving us a lot of money. Over time, we calculated the amount of money that we've saved with our zero waste lifestyle. And I've kind of added it all up. We run about $18,000 of savings every year based on all of the cumulative changes that we've made over the past, 10 years or so.
So we live on an urban homestead, which is actually just our backyard is 1/8 of an acre. And you can actually see it here behind us.
Yeah,
we have a little slideshow.
Yeah. Go ahead.
You see. And so it's located in Talmadge, which is a cute little neighborhood here. And we're 10 minutes from San Diego downtown, and actually 5 minutes from the freeway. And we grow 80% of the food that we eat for our family of 5. So obviously we are vegans, which makes it a little easier in that sense. And we grow food, and you can see our homestead there on the picture. So we grow food so our kids can eat the very best. First of all, and then second of all is this way our food has the lowest carbon footprint. And also I have to tell you, it is kind of cool to go out and just pick your food in the backyard. And I always say, if you want to explain a miracle to a kid, just plant a garden.
That's right. That's right. And the kids would love to get involved with the garden, and the touching on some of the topics before, from the worm bin to the composting to getting into the soil and looking for bugs. It's all like a big science project, and the kids really love it. We get, in fact, I think we can almost skip this scene because we've talked about this so much today in terms of the different sessions, but I will share with you our motto, which is, if we can't compost it, recycle it, or reuse it, we just don't buy it. And I think those themes have just been hit over and over and over again today.
So I want to say that if we obviously follow the 5 R's of recycle, reduce, reuse, refuse. And I have to say, refuse is the first thing that we practice. And then second of all is reduce.
I know we want to do mostly Q&A today, so we'll just touch on a couple more things, and then we'd love to jump into your questions. But one of the questions that we get so often is, how do you save all of this money? And we'll answer all your questions, but some of the ones is that buying food in bulk, we really kind of rethought our lifestyle and kind of went down to 1 car from 2, and we do kind of a lot of biking. We also really rethink, as Frederica said, trying to buy almost nothing new, and really think about how can we buy something used, how can we source it from a friend, how can we buy kind of reuse something that we've got, or we have a deal that we wait 3 days before we buy anything. Sometimes in those 3 days we realize we don't actually need something we thought that we needed to buy. And as we said, we grow 80% of our own food, which has a big impact on our carbon footprint.
And we practice zero waste gardening, which is, our garden doesn't cost us very much money because we hardly ever buy anything for it.
That's right. And we get tons of questions, and I bet a lot of them will be here today. Well, how do you do this with kids, right? And having kids is definitely an interesting challenge, and an interesting twist on the whole thing. And one of the big pieces of advice we learned early on is to really get the whole family involved, right? Make it a fun family challenge, but make it feel like they aren't like something that you're forcing on them, but it's like, how can they get involved? And so, for instance, our kids are at that age where they love Legos, right? And Legos come with plastic and packaging, yet they're at the perfect age to be exploring Legos. So little do I know, there's a whole group of people that like to buy Legos and then clean them and sell them on eBay, right? And so there are all these alternatives to kind of get the kids involved and kind of coming up with different ways to do things.
Yeah, and then of course also we live a more minimal life. And I think that when friends come visit us and they look at my kids' toys, they go, oh my God, they don't have a lot. But trust me, my kids our kids are very happy kids, but they're very, very creative. They are like the things that they play with is kind of funny. They can, today it was a sleeping bag that they ran around and pretended to be different things. And I find that you less toys they have, you more they care for the ones they have. They have a car track that I actually traded for a couple of jars of jam from a friend, and that her kids used to have. My kids love these car tracks, and they probably over 20 years old. And so my kids, they have the few toys and they really, really do love that. And of course, when we do buy something for them, like James said, we buy it used. So for our 8-year-old, for his birthday in February, he got new, what do you call them, rollerblades? The rollerblades, and we bought them used. He didn't care as long as we're rollerblades and we're working. And the thing is also, we make most of our homemade snacks, which it seems like a lot of work, but it's actually very, very easy.
I think the key overall to a lot of the themes that we'll touch on is to slow life down a little bit. We have allowed, many of us have allowed our lives to get so busy that we turn to companies for conveniences to allow us to fit in all the things that we need to do. And so we really made a conscious choice to try to slow things down, and in doing so, also with kids planning ahead, right? Talking about homemade snacks there, but there's so much of it is, if you're thinking through your day and what's happening next, kind of being 3, 4, 5, or as Frederica says, 10 steps ahead of kind of what's going on in the day and what do you need, because you know, when you're kind of out there in the real world, you like need a snack. I mean, most of everything out there is in single-use packaging. And so you really just kind of need to think through what you need to do for the day.
I want to give a couple of just practical tips on how to reduce waste. That we pack school every day. Now this being COVID, so 2 of them have been home swim back to school. But before, I always send their homemade lunches in reusable packaging. And we're out and about a lot. We go to the beach a lot. We have surfer kids and we have ballet dancing and everything. We always bring snacks, water bottles, and lunch with us. That way we would never get caught with, they're hungry and we need to get a snack quickly. And our kids are very much into arts and crafts, which most kids are, I assume, but our kids are like very creative. They will literally go through all our neighbors' recycling bins and find materials for building whatever they're building with recycled materials. And they're very, very creative that way. And then also for the kids, if we have to buy something, like we were going to the snow in January and turns out our teenage daughter's jackets was too small. So instead, going to buy one, we just put it out on Facebook. Hey, does anyone have a jacket? And lo and behold, 10 people offered a jacket for us. So she had her picks. And then of course, when it comes to school supply, because they're all 3 of them in school, we try to focus on materials that are recycled or borrowed or things that we can recycle after they're done with it.
So we could go on all day,
yes.
But I think I want to maybe stop there. We do have a book a brilliant book that Frederica's written that really catalogs all these practical tips that we've figured out as a family that you could find at our website, zerowastefamily.com. But let's, Emily, why don't we focus on what are the things that people really want to hear today?
Sure, absolutely. Well, thank you for that background. I love your story because you're just real people, right? James, you were a little resistant and you weren't so sure, but here you are doing it, and you're doing it with kids, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're currently 8, 10, and 14, just to give people context, correct?
You got it.
Great.
You got it. And we really started this journey when Liam was really just a baby, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, the boys, in a way, the 2 younger ones really almost don't know a different lifestyle, whereas our daughter was interesting. And then also going through teenage years with fashion and everything, it's been also interesting in case those kind of questions come up around. That was parental navigation to sort all that out.
Yeah. Well, we have a couple questions here. Speaking of kids, we had one that came in. What do you do for diapers?
We did cloth diapers and actually even cloth wipes for our kids. And it was so funny because actually at one point we had 2 kids in cloth diapers. It is not a lot more work. That's what people thought. And it's not messier, it's not nastier or anything like that. And it saves you so much money because diapers costs a lot of money. And when we were done with the cloth diapers, they have a great resale value. So I sold them all and got half of the money back.
This was a perfect example of where when Frederica's first said we were gonna do cloth diapers, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Well, at least we're just gonna do that at home, right? Not like at night or when we go out. But you know, for those of you who have don't know anything about cloth diapers, I'll just say the technology is so much better than you think. They're so much easier and so much more functional than you realize. And quite frankly, when you've got kids, you're doing laundry all the time. So having an extra couple tubs of laundry every week isn't actually that big a deal.
Awesome. When it comes to craft supplies, do you know of a site or a way to donate used craft supplies?
We actually buy our bin from TerraCycle, which they have one for broken toys and also for arts and crafts. And so we have that. They're not cheap, but I don't know if you guys know about TerraCycle, but they do take the material and upcycle it and make other things out of it. So that's what we use.
And some of our things go to Rare Hair, which is a great little arts and crafts place, but I'm a little worried with so many people on the line that inundating them with things, but there's certain things that we do, like the tops of kids' vitamin bottles are these really cool caps, and they love those for arts and craft projects. And then, we try to do them as well.
I know there's a few other groups locally that are arts-focused nonprofits that do this as well. So if you want to call Waste Free SD, we have a list of those that we can share. And I'll also suggest, if you're looking at crayons specifically, I don't remember the websites off the top of my head, but if you Google them, there's a few locations that will take just crayons.
Yeah, actually crayons, but we take all crayons that are broken and we actually make new crayons from them. And that is actually one of our kids' favorite craft to do, to make new crayons.
Yeah, if you've got kids, check out our YouTube video on that, because our kids love to do that.
Yeah.
And those make good gifts too, to give to somebody else.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So someone asked, do you or your children feel out of sync with our consumer-oriented world?
It's been a little bit of a journey on that. I think that the short answer is no. I think you certainly start to draw the people into your life that have more of a similar point of view on this. But I think it's also been interesting as you go through, for instance, our daughter went through 7th grade a year ago, and all the girls got into fashion and they were going to the mall all the time. I thought, oh boy, okay, here we go. My daughter has a capsule closet. She's very, she buys all her clothes off ThredUp or secondhand. But it was really interesting. By the end of the school year, her friends would come over to her house and go, oh my God, I love your closet. I can see all your clothes. Yeah. It's so nice. My closet's a total mess. My closet needs to be more like yours. And so you do start to if you just kind of stand in your principles, you do become a role model for others around you.
And do you have any recommendations, whether it's related to kids at birthday parties or when they're going out to other places where people might not be living your same, principles? What do you suggest, or how do you equip your kids for those situations?
So we always, first of all, we always try to, like I said, plan ahead. That's it. I think that is the biggest lesson for us zero wasters. So if our kids are going to a birthday party, first of all, we always make homemade cards, which are more popular anyway. And generally also there will be gifts that are sustainable, or there will definitely be wrapped sustainable. And actually came up very creative ways, and the kids love that. And also, if we're going somewhere where we know it's going to be more wasteful, that they're going to use disposable cups and plates and stuff like that, we always bring our own stuff. And it's interesting because in our community, I think that they're used to me and James, so they know. And actually, some of them now, when they throw birthday parties, actually borrow our zero waste birthday box to use for their own birthday parties. So I think it's just to plan ahead and bring the things, and it's okay to call ahead and ask also, what are you planning? What are you doing? And that way you can bring whatever. And don't think that your kid is going to stand out and be weird. I actually find that our kids are more popular because they bring their own stuff.
Yeah, our kids are vegetarians. So we kind of have a built-in excuse to call ahead to see, can we bring our own food? But quite frankly, I really feel like over the last 10 years, there are so many kids with different food allergies and challenges that it just is totally socially acceptable to call ahead and then say, well, I'm going to bring this or bring that.
Mm-hmm. So on a similar vein, someone very observant noticed that you said you're vegan, but that you have chickens in your garden. So why do you have chickens?
It's so funny. People ask us all the time why we have chickens. No one asks us why we have a dog. But the chickens are here for the same reason, kind of like the dog. We love our girls. They are the cuddliest, funniest, and they have great personality. But our chicken also have a very important role on our urban homesteads. So first of all, they eat our compost. They are the cutest composters you ever gonna find, the most demanding too, may I add. But so they eat our leftovers. Second is that they provide fertilizer for our garden, which is really, really essential for us. And then third is that their eggs actually become eggshells, I should say, not the eggs, because we don't eat them. The eggshells we make into calcium powder for our tomatoes. So the chickens, and they also are a little bit bug control. So whenever we get a lot of bugs, they come out and help us in the garden.
Perfect. Okay, so how do you avoid plastic at the grocery store, especially with so many fruits and veggies that come in plastic clamshells? And for those who don't yet have a backyard homestead, what do you suggest?
Well, I would say that we are so spoiled here in San Diego because I'm from Sweden and this is not the case there. Here we have a farmer's market pretty much every day of the week, all year round. We had no excuses. We can go to the farmer's market and buy all the fruit and vegetables without any stickers or any plastic, and they happily would take your own bags. We even buy berries at the farmer's market, and we'll bring our own containers to put them in to take them home, or we will return their basket and they will reuse them. So that is the easiest way. And I would also say that for us, we obviously eat according to the seasons. And I think that even when we lived in Sweden, where everything is wrapped in plastic, I don't know what the Swedes are up with the plastic, but there we actually will figure out, we might go to 2 different stores because here they had the bananas without the plastic and here they had, but you find the stores like People's Co-op, they sell pretty much everything without plastic, and you can bring your own bags to put things in. So there are definitely options. But if you buy food and fruit that are not local or according to seasons, like if it comes from Costa Rica, yeah, the chances are it's going to be wrapped in plastic.
Mm-hmm. So what do you do when you travel within the US and abroad?
Yeah, we become like an art for us to travel. So obviously living in San Diego, we don't have a choice than to hop on the plane once in a while, and especially because I'm from Sweden, so we have to go there. Obviously COVID has stopped us from going anywhere in a while. But we, first of all, if we fly, we will call ahead and refuse our meal because it comes so much in plastic and basically no one likes the food anyway. And we will bring our own, like my friend actually calls me Martha Stewart of flying because I will bring these gourmet meals, and we will bring our own water bottles, we'll bring our own napkins. And it seems like a lot of things to bring, but basically we have kids, we bring a lot of things with us anyway.
Yeah, there is an art, we learned this art, I give Frederick all the credit. There's this art of meal preparation and snack preparation in mason jars. Yeah. I mean, you can just do all sorts of meals from pasta to salads to different things in mason and snacks in mason jars. So it's kind of like water bottles, stacks of mason jars, and then, ready to travel.
Perfect. Can you give more insight into what you have in your zero waste birthday box?
Yes, so we have decorations that we can reuse again, tablecloths and napkins, and actually a compost. We always bring a compost, and then plates, cups, spoons, plates, yeah, and pitchers.
Yeah,
for
reusable
drinks.
Pitchers. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And then bamboo utensils.
Yeah, and we always make our own snacks, and again, has been very, very popular. Making cupcakes or a cake ain't that hard. And we will also have, chips or dips or vegetable snacks, whatever they want.
Great. It's a lot of finger foods too.
Yes.
With the chickens, back to the chickens, they're getting a little love in the chat right now as well. What do you do with the chickens' eggs if you're not eating them?
Oh, our friends happily takes them, and neighbors.
And then they bring back the shells.
Yeah, and then good bribes for the neighbors who might not enjoy the singing from the chickens when they lay an egg.
Yeah, I mean, we really have a community of people around us, so we know who doesn't spray their yard, and so we take their grass clippings. We don't have any grass because we grow food everywhere, but we take their grass clippings as mulch, and we'll give eggs, and so we've got a whole kind of community of people around us that we trade for things. And there's a great Facebook group for
San Diego backyard
growers.
exchange. Yeah.
Right. And so we can exchange eggs for all sorts of other things that we're not growing right now.
Yeah. And during COVID, in the beginning of COVID, when no one can find eggs, we happily shared eggs with all our friends and colleagues who needed them.
Awesome. Well, we're coming to the end of our time together, but before we wrap up, we've talked a little bit about the environmental impact. We've talked about the financial impact with $18,000 a year in savings, which I still can't get over. Have you seen any other impacts to your life outside of those two?
Well, I would say that like saving that much money allows us to spend much more time with our kids. And I think that, like I said, my journey began way before his. And I think James came about when he was very overworked and needed to slow down his working and spend more time with with our children. So the 18,000 allows us to work from home, and most of the time, I should say, and part-time.
Yeah, and I would say that you know, I'm old enough that I grew up in an era where kids grew up worried about like nuclear war and Russia and whatnot. I think today a lot of kids have anxiety about climate change and what's happening to the planet. And for us, getting our kids involved in, no, you can make a difference. You can make choices. We can teach you how to live differently. Kind of, I think, makes them feel in control that they're doing something to help the planet.
Great. Okay, so to wrap it up, what is one thing that you'd like our audience to walk with? I'll give you each a chance to answer this one.
Go ahead.
Well, I would say that reduce food waste at home. That made a huge difference for us, saved us a lot of money because it's literally throwing money into the trash can otherwise. But also, you know, it's saving the planet because food waste is so wasteful and so bad for the environment. So just eating our leftovers and eating what we have in the pantry. And we literally will only go grocery shopping every 2 weeks when we really are out of a lot of things. But we will eat what we have instead of what we're craving for the moment.
I would say slow your life down a little bit. Give you the space, give yourself the space to not always have to be buying things at the last minute and you know, grabbing something on the go. Just slow life down, plan ahead, and enjoy the time with your kids.
Wonderful. Well, it has been a true pleasure having you both with us. You are a bundle of joy and energy and great ambassadors for the zero waste movement. So thank you for showing us that it's doable and doable with a family and doable here in San Diego.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll see you soon. Thanks. Okay. All right, that brings us to the end of our event today. So let me bring up just our last little segment here on the screen. Okay. So we've had a wonderful morning of speakers and have learned a lot. If you feel like you didn't quite catch everything, that's okay, because we are recording this event, and fingers crossed that the technology works for us, but we will be sharing a recording with all of you through our YouTube channel. So look out next week for some information on where to find that link and some other details as well. So what do you do next with all the information that you gleaned? I wish that I could meet with each of you individually and give you a specific answer, but we're all at different stages of life. We're all have different resources. There's no one size fits all answer, but I want to share just a couple of things that will help from a behavior change standpoint. So first, focus on your bright spots. As humans, we have a tendency to focus on what's going wrong, but instead focus on what's going right. What were those times when you remembered to ask for no plastic utensils when you got takeout? Or what did you do to reduce your food waste? Then how can you replicate that and take that to other areas? Second, make one change at a time. I know it's easy to get excited about all the possibilities that are out there, but take it slow, one change at a time, and make sure that change sticks before you move on to something else. Turn that change into a habit so you don't have to make it a decision anymore. Decision fatigue is a real challenge for us. So when you have habits, those don't burn your self-control. One tip to build new habits is to set an action trigger. What that means is just to link your new habit with an existing habit. So for example, if you are looking to prevent food waste and you often have produce that goes bad, when you get home from the grocery store, when you're unloading into the refrigerator onto your counter, one thing that you can add is taking your produce, washing it and cutting it. You know, if you have carrots, you cut them into sticks. If you have grapes, maybe you pull them off the stems. So that way it is edible, it is good to go. When your week gets a little bit busy, it's not an extra step to wash your produce. So link your new habits to an existing habit that you already have to set yourself up for success. So as you can see, there's a lot of work to be done as individuals, as a society, and there's lots of ways that we can get there, but we can't get there without your help. The small actions really do make a difference. We see that in nature. Some of our most impressive natural features like the Grand Canyon and the Yosemite Valley were made with small, consistent forward motion, and that's true for us as well. Thanks again for joining us today. We would love to hear your feedback on what you think of this event. This is the 6th annual Zero Waste Fair. It's our 2nd time hosting it virtually, so we're not sure what next year holds for us, but either way, we'd love to hear what you liked, what worked, and what didn't. So Val will be launching a poll right now if you could share your thoughts. While we are filling out the poll, I want to once again thank the City of Encinitas for funding this event, and a thank you to each of our panelists for not only sharing their time with us, but to committing their lives to environmental health and setting an example for all of us to follow. If you had a favorite segment, shout it out in the chat box. We are going to send a follow-up email next week. That follow-up email will contain contact information and websites for all of the speakers that you heard from today, resources that were shared from each organization, and then also the link to the recording from today's event. We also will have in that follow-up email the link to the Google form for entering the keywords for the opportunity drawing. So we are approaching 1 o'clock, so I can share our last keyword for the day, which is change. That's really what it's all about, isn't it? So change is your final keyword. Again, enter that to the Google form, which you have in the chat, and then also in the follow-up email. We will be selecting the winners on Friday, June 18th for our fun prizes. If you're interested in getting involved with I Love a Clean San Diego, visit cleansd.org. That's where you can sign up for our newsletter. You can look at our calendar of events. We have cleanups almost every week. We have multiple sustainability themed webinars throughout the year. And we are looking at moving forward, continuing those webinars even as we bring back our in-person workshops as well. Coastal Cleanup Day is one of our largest events of the year. That is a countywide cleanup coming up in September. So you can keep an eye out for more information on that event. And if you know of a business, or maybe you work at a business that's interested in change, we do have a program called Corporate Clean Building. It's a team building event, but it's also paired with environmental action. And we do come and speak to businesses as well. So if you are interested in that, let us know. One more plug for I Love a Clean San Diego. As we are reopening to many of our programs that were put on pause, we are currently hiring and will be hiring for several positions across the organization. So check out our careers page. You can look now. I know more will be posted within the next 2 weeks. So maybe if you're interested in applying, or if you could share that with those in your network who would be a good fit, we would appreciate that help as well. Thank you to those who donated. Change goes a long way. And then lastly, we want to hear from you. I know today you got to see and hear from us. We want to hear what's working for you. So if there's anything that inspired you, if you down the road make changes and have successes or even fails, we would love to hear more about what you're experiencing with your sustainability journey. So we have our email address up on the screen, education@cleansd.org. We also have our social media where you can tag us as well. So with that, we're going to go ahead and close for today, but we wish you the best of luck on your zero waste journey, and we hope to see you again soon.
Yes, thank you so much again for joining us, and to the panelists for sharing their knowledge and experiences with us. We do hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and weekend. Bye.